because I can.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Hopefully my audio's 5x5 today. Welcome to the Wild Geese. We have an amazing movie, a special guest, and a surprise in the pin post if you look. Wild Geese is a fantastic and amazing action movie that's kind of loosely based on some real events. One of the foremost experts, if not the foremost expert, is my next guest. His name is Lance Nielsen. I got it right this time. Welcome, Lance. Welcome aboard.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate the invitation. My voice is a little bit gravelly because I am getting over the flu. So, but very excited to be here because this is one of my favourite films of all time, and I know so much about it. So, yeah, looking forward to getting.
Let me just tell our audience the level of passion you have. Lance does, in fact, have the flu. He was scheduled to be my guest on Tuesday. Whether he can still do that or not is up to him, and we don't know. But he came on early out of just passion for this movie. And that also makes you like the first repeat guest we've had in like 4 months. Congratulations. We liked you so much the first time. We renewed you immediately. So he's here for as long as his voice holds out. I guess the best thing to do is let everyone know, first of all, Silver Screen Journeys, my copy's on the way, which means you'll get at least something about Admiral Teag face reveal. Also, so that link is in the chat. Give it a try. Check it out. I think this is a very worthwhile purchase. As far as this movie, it is kind of a corner piece of now what will be 2 books. I understand, very influential in your life. I'm going to start it right away just by telling people this movie is 2 hours and 14 minutes long. Okay, and unfortunately, it starts after a terrible commercial for something that it's at least not Star Trek. Lance, tell us about the first time you saw this movie and your passion. While I get the pizza that has just arrived.
Yeah, sure. Well, there's actually a really quite long-winded story about how I first came to watch this film. I was too young to see it when it came out in the cinema. I'd heard about it a little bit before then, and then eventually what happened was it was bought up by one of the 3 television stations, which was called ITV or ITV1 or ITVX as it's now known. And ITV had the big money, so ITV had advertising. They did commercials when they showed their feature films, and they always got the Bond movies. They always got the big action films. They always got the big Hollywood films because they could outbid BBC on these things, you know. So I can continue telling this story while you play the movie if you want.
Yeah, we're past the commercial for whatever that was. And what's great is the pizza guy showed up as the commercial rolled. So I've got my pizza. We're totally ready for a movie, and I won't die of starvation here. Hello, Stephen, and hello to RRTNZ and Radioactive. I'm gonna guess.
Hey.
I guess you know what. Let's go right. RRTNZ's wisdom forged this ring or this dyad in the Wild Geese Force. So I'm looking forward to just setting you loose on this movie. Guys, what do you think? Give our guests the choice. Do you believe that that closed captions would help?
I don't mind either way. So
All right, let's put on the. Now, I object to this. I find this to be a little bit oppressive by you guys, but there are no American subtitles. I'm forced to listen to them in what's called American English, which, you know what? Our language is a reverse import back to you guys, but that's another stream. Go for it, Lance. We're going to start the movie in 3, 2, 1.
So actually, I'll just say something about the opening titles of this film. They're designed by Maurice Binder, who was the guy to go to design your titles if you wanted something a little bit different, a little bit imaginative. And he was incredibly clever at doing these kind of photographic montages blended with what were the state-of-the-art graphics at the time. And he did all the early James Bond films. So
I was going to say this feels like a Bond opening to a degree.
Yeah, and he did another film with Roger Moore called Gold, which was also shot in South Africa around this time. And this was filmed during the time of apartheid. And by the way, I am South African, so that's a whole other story.
I was not aware.
I'm adopted like you. So
amazing. It's the greatest love you can really get, in my opinion.
This song, which is sung by Joan Armatrading, who's a great, absolutely fantastic singer. The funny thing is she's still probably most well known for this song above any others, and she would get frequent requests from our military, particularly the Navy, to come and do like concerts on ships. And it was when she sung this song, you know, all the sailors they go ape for it. They all loved this movie. You know, everyone that was served in the military, this was a bit of a go-to watch. So to come back to how I first saw it, it was screened on British television on a Sunday night, and it was on either side of the news on the 17th of September 1978, so approximately a year after its release in 77. It was filmed in 76, or it might have been filmed partly in 77 as well, but it was released in 77. I need to check the production date. And the problem was Sunday night was technically a school night, and I had to beg my parents to let me stay up and watch this movie, because this film was advertised, you know, as the film months ahead. Like they started advertising it probably in like July, coming soon to ITV, The Wild Geese, and you'd suddenly get this compilation of, you know, lots of action shots. And I was like, and I saw James Bond in it, you know, Roger Moore.
Right.
Richard Burton was already my favorite actor because of Where Eagles Dare. Sponsorship from Concord.
Legend, I believe, right?
Yeah. By the way, that's a sponsorship. Concord paid for that shot in the film.
Did they?
Oh yeah.
You know what? That was one of the things. These mercenaries live a pretty good highfalutin life for the time they're at. Look at just drinking out of a bottle bag.
I can probably talk you through all the sponsorship as the different things come up, but they were even sponsored by arms manufacturers for this film, which we can come on to later. So
early early product placement. Huh? Hi, John.
Well, you know, product placement for no film does a better product placement for the Uzi 9mm machine gun than the Wild Geese. So you know. Anyway,
you mentioned it's kind of a notoriously inaccurate close quarters weapon, not kind of used.
I've fired one, and it pulls up proper high. This is filmed in Kensington, which is a very posh part of sort of central West London, where all the rich people live, and certainly did in the 70s. Anyway, so my campaign of kind of whinging with my parents, they basically said I could stay up until the news. So I basically got to stay up until the mission began, and then I was told I had to go to bed. And of course, I went up to bed. I was really upset. And then when I heard it starting again after the news finished, I crept down and I was like watching the film through the crack in the door. And my mum knew I was there, and she was like, "Told you to go to bed." And Dad it's the one time Dad jumped in and he said, oh, just let him watch it. And it was like,
That's
as long as you're
great.
quiet, and that was it. So I got to watch the rest of it. It wasn't
That's a
until
lot they left the movie on. You know, this had appeal for the. This is what's called fun for the whole family, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, it's not a family movie. Back then, it certainly wasn't. I wouldn't call it a family film now. It's got a
You know, but there's
15
something
certificate
in it
current.
for everyone. I would
Well, I
say,
mean,
yeah, I don't want your young kid watching it, but with a guardian, probably okay.
yeah, I mean, I think it all depends on when your kid grew up. You got to remember that this came out in
78.
77 at the cinema, 78 on television. We were not used to seeing people's throats get cut open
Yeah,
with a knife in movies, and
make
we
no
were not
mistake.
used to
These are
people
very
being
violent men.
we were not used to people being shot through the throat or cut up with machetes, and all of those sequences were heavily edited for the ITV screening. It wasn't until I rented it on VHS about 2 years later. It was one of the first VHSs to drop on the video market in the UK. We took it home, we watched it at my friend's house, and it was like, hey, this is like way more violent, you know. And also there was more swearing in it. So immediately I realised that they'd redubbed a lot of the dialogue for ITV, and you know they'd also trimmed the violence. Now since then, for my 30th birthday or 28th or something like that, I hired out a cinema, and I convinced 50 of my friends to turn up on a Sunday morning to
It's
come and
amazing.
see a surprise film. None of them knew what the movie was, but there was a quote from the film on the invitation, and only one person got it. Only one person guessed what the quote was from, and he kept stum. So when the film opened, none of them had a clue that they were seeing the Wild Geese. And I think of the 50 people that were there, at least 35 of them had never seen the movie. So, so not only did I take a whole load of people to see the Wild Geese on my birthday on the big screen, and I got to see it on the big screen, but a lot of them saw it for the first time on the big screen because of me. And I mean, there's a massive difference seeing any film on the big screen. Now, this film isn't perfect. There's visually there are a couple of things that haven't dated well, and and those things are all in the first 25 minutes. But once the film gets to Africa, I would say it's pretty much flawless. I mean, you've got to look at the caliber of the people on board before you even get to the script. Before you even get to the cast, the script is written by Reginald Rose. Reginald Rose wrote 12 Angry Men. And one of the things that always struck me about this movie, and I really thought we were going to get this with the Expendables. I thought when I heard the Expendables was coming out, I thought this is going to be a modern Wild Geese. I can't wait to see this. But the Expendables is just like the action in Expendables is all nonsense because there's all these guns going off everywhere and cars blowing up and stuff. But none of your bankable box office stars get killed in case they need them for the sequel. What you know, in this film, once the mission goes wrong and people start dying, they start dying really quite quickly. And you've got 50 mercenaries on the mission, four leaders, and then there's probably about 10 or 12 supporting characters, and you're invested in all of them. For you know, you're very invested in the sergeant major, for example, who's quite he's a supporting but really key.
He looks like the guy who flips out in The Thing when they're like, maybe you shouldn't be holding on to this gun.
Yeah, Tom Watson and Donald Moffat do look really similar, actually. Yeah.
Which one is Punky Brewster's father?
Yeah, Donald Moffat.
Well, uncle. Okay.
Yeah, Donald Moffat is the American Jack Watson. Sorry, not Tom Watson.
Yeah, he does a great like Northeast fake British accent. He's like, "Oh, Punky." It's like, okay, that's not really British. That's snobby Northeast like me.
And I mean, originally, I forget which part, but one of the roles was earmarked. I think it was either Burton's or Richard Harris's role was earmarked for Burt Lancaster.
Yes.
And
And we have a Lancaster lookalike in the Limbarni kidnapping for the Lancaster at that time.
yeah. Now the scene that's on now. So this is however many minutes in. It's what we call the 70s disco party
It's
scene.
9 minutes and 40 seconds, and we're going to see
Yeah.
that
This,
Sean Connery. Roger Moore is sort of like, he will smuggle things around like guns and other stuff, but if you lie to him, screw him over, or mess with his code of honor, he's a mercenary, but he's not without honor.
He was basically. I think this scene it could have been written a bit better. He was basically smuggling a girl who had bags of drugs in her body, and the bags split, and the girl died. And he had a code, and Roger Moore, by the way, had this code in real life. He didn't do or touch drugs ever. Roger Moore liked his champagne, but he was very, very anti-narcotics of any kind.
Could you imagine him, Harris, and Michael Caine hanging out? It's like, I suppose I'll be the designated driver again, lads.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons that this film was only able to get the insurance to shoot if Richard Harris. I don't think he was so concerned about Roger Moore, who was always the consummate professional. You never hear any stories about Moore being unprofessional. But, Richard Harris and Richard Burton were known drinking hellraisers. They were known for it. So both Harris and Burton had to sign contracts that basically put their fees in escrow. And if they got drunk or they missed a day's filming because they were alcoholic, or in fact, they had to be completely dry for the entire shoot.
That's worked into the dialogue too. It's like, I'd never drink while I'm working, and then we see them drinking a little later. But we'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. From what
beer wasn't drinking, right?
Yeah, from what I've been told, because I'm friends with two people that were on the movie, both of whom are still alive. From what I'm told, they didn't drink on the shoot at all. They drank on the last night. There was a rap party, and I think they got pissed on the last night. But
I would hope so. The characters have a couple of beers after they swear off drinking, but right here, this violent, well, not so violent, but this very, very, we got a headshot there.
Yeah.
This execution of this Martinelli mob boss, this guy's got a few problems, and he's like, this is like very Marathon Man. It's like, you want it? Eat it. And he's got this bag of like deadly,
when I watched this as a kid, I didn't understand what was happening because I kept saying to my parents, why are they making him eat baking powder? And my dad just sort of went, it's drugs. And my mum gave him like this look, like, don't tell him that. And I'm like, what do you mean it's drugs? And it's just like, it's poison. It's poison. They're making him eat poison. And it's like rat poison. And I was like, oh, right, okay. And as it turns out, Roger Moore has laced the drugs with poison to kill him anyway. So he's got no chance of surviving, even if he vomits it all up.
Right. Yeah, it's already in your blood. And also, like, enjoy these few hours of unmitigated agony. Bye. This is cold.
I think the actor who played the spoilt rich kid, who's the son of the local godfather, as they put it in the script, if I remember rightly, I think he's a relative of a really big producer, American film
I would
producer.
imagine. Honestly, he didn't have a big part. You didn't have to be a great actor to do it. This is exactly where you start someone's career or put your nepo hire. And that's a reasonable role. It's very small. He's in there for 1 minute, and what does he have to do? Be scared and
Yeah, he was he's played by David Ladd. He's still alive. That's right. His
Alan Ladd.
His father was Alan Ladd of the Ladd Film Company.
And Cheryl Ladd's in the mix there too.
Police Academy and that's right. Related to Cheryl Ladd. In fact, he was married to Cheryl.
Married in. Yeah, married in. Alan Ladd is the grandfather. He's Shane, if I have that right. Alan Ladd Shane. That's where this sort of starts. The shortest leading man. They had to dig a little hole for other people to stand in when they did the shots next to him.
Yeah. So, you know what? He'd be a good person to track down and try and interview. I might have to see if I can get hold of him. But
what do you think of this here with where we show Richard Harris with Rennie? He's a good enough actor to pull it off.
So this scene with the son, and he's still alive. He lives in Thailand now, running holidays and whatnot. This kid. This scene always, even when I, with this kid doing this Yahoo. I'll tell you why this scene grated with me. My mum turned around, and I remember her saying to me, "See how well behaved that child is. You should be more like him." And I was like, Jesus Christ! If I was like him at school, I'd get the shit beaten out of me. But
if my father killed people all day for fun, I would behave. I would behave too.
I mean, it's it's accurate, because if you go to I went to a private school for a while where we all had to wear caps and lift them off our heads and things like this.
That's awesome.
Yeah, my dad had a good job until he lost it, and then I went to a state school. So one of the things that makes me a good writer is I've had these two very different backgrounds when I was growing up. One, for a while we were a kind of middle class family with a lot of money. We were looking at buying a second home and all kinds of things, and then suddenly my dad's company relocated to Yorkshire. He decided not to go with them because of my mum's parents, and everything changed, and he had to become a freelance graphic designer again in a world that had completely changed. So that was a huge shift for us. But when I was at the private school, the boys that were there, some of them were as posh as these kids. And that where they filmed the school scenes where they're playing rugby and stuff, that's in Teddington in Middlesex. That is actually just up the road from Kingston, which is where I grew up. So I love this scene, by the way, because these are two powerhouse actors. They've got great dialogue. And what's really good about the Wild Geese is it's got a lot of characters to introduce you to before we get to Africa, and it does it really, really, really well. Yeah, Paul Spurrier
I strongly agree with that.
Yeah, Paul Spurrier was a film producer for a while. That's another story about him.
This movie does a great job of this is another show we talked about was we both love the 1883 and 1923 shows. That's another show. They give equal care to setting up every character, but some people might be checking out in 5 minutes. They don't care. They're going to let you think that this character's safe. And this movie does that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important because you've got to be really invested in Harris as the father. He is, I wrote about this in my book, he's the moral compass of this movie. He is the man who has put down his guns, is making a little bit of a living dealing in antiques and whatever else he's up to. And he's totally devoted to his son, who he's given the best education. And he's already booked him a holiday over Christmas to go to Switzerland, skiing in Switzerland. This is in the 70s. Only proper rich kids got to go skiing in Switzerland in the 70s, So,
may I just throw in here is the idea is that when we're catching up to Richard Harris's character here, he at some point off screen before this movie, he had the last big cash in and he survived it. Some kind of really dangerous, very lucrative mission. And he's enjoying the fruits of it now. And he thinks he's done. And what's going to happen here? We're going to find out that he has a little bit of honor. That's I think the name is inspired by the Irish expatriates who went and fought in the Napoleonic Wars, if I'm correct, the Wild Geese.
Well, it's based on a book by a guy called Daniel Carney,
right?
Who based the book on the exploits of Mad Mike Hoare.
Right.
My understanding is that the Wild Geese came from a nickname that some of the mercenaries got given. But look, there's lots of different accounts of how that name came about, but it's a great name for the movie.
The most commonly heard one that I've heard is that it's the Irish people who left Ireland to serve in European armies between 1500 and 1700.
And that could well be the origin story for it.
Wild Geese was the departure of an Irish Jacobite army under the command of Patrick Sarsfield from Ireland and France. I've also heard Bonnie Prince Charlie. This is a recurring term. I think it's been said a lot of times. There's enough Irish heroic military heroes to have liberated Ireland a long time ago, but they fought under another flag.
So the other thing that's interesting about this scene is you get this little bit of exposition where Harris says, how many times am I going to liberate some guy's country for him, only for him to go and steal his treasury as soon as I put him in power? which happens. I mean, that happens a lot. Happens almost with every revolution. I mean, if you look at Uganda as a prime example, President Museveni has been in that country as leader ever since he took control.
He took it from the last king of Scotland, right?
Yeah, from Idi Amin, and he has absolutely no intention of leaving. He's murdered literally hundreds of people to keep that position. He's murdered presidents of other African countries. I mean, I could get into all that, but you know, and this is what, you know, you have a Ugandan partner, you get to hear all these stories. And
my gosh, you know what? Our chat's right, by the way. It's 10 years later. It's not the same kid, but he does look like the chocolate factory star, doesn't he, Rennie?
He does a bit, yeah.
He does.
This is great as well because you get that. Okay, tell me how I get into this place. Where, you know,
he's lit his ideological spark. Now he wants to do the right thing. They're not quite the most base or money-oriented mercenaries. They have a deep sense of honor, like in Peckinpah's Wild Bunch.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that I love about this film is, you know, at its core theme, it's a movie about friendship and loyalty, really, and what that means. And you know, Janders knows if he lets Faulkner go in without him, he knows the mission has less chance of succeeding. So ultimately, the reason he goes is to make sure his friend lives. That's why he goes. And it's, you know, it's the honor, it's the friendship between the two of them. He could have just planned it, and I mean, there's several opportunities in the film for him to turn around and say, actually, no, I'm not going to go, particularly when the dates get moved. He could have put his foot down and said, okay, well, that's me out then. But he doesn't, again, out of loyalty to his friend. But in return for that, he expects his friend to bring him back safely to his son. It's a quid pro quo thing as well, which is why the last 15 minutes of the film are so fucking utterly heartbreaking.
Very powerful.
But we'll come on to that. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, I love this restaurant they're in. Like they're hanging out in Benihana of London. I love this guy he talked to. That guy had like Doctor Who vibes about him.
So that I mean, that actor is a fantastic British character actor who's been in absolutely loads and loads and loads of things. Barry Foster. He plays Balfour. He's like the go-between between Matheson and you know, Burton's character, Colonel Faulkner. And
we're scouting safe houses here, correct? And everyone's watching their known locations. So like, well, we can't go to this safe house and we can't go to that pub to meet people. So where do we go next?
Yeah, I mean, they're basically looking for Sean Finn, Roger Moore's character. Right, so this lady who's at the crap tables, there's 3 Bond girls in this scene.
Gorgeous. Yeah, I see one right here on the right.
Yeah, that's one. You've got Valerie Leon as well.
Is that Maud Adams?
I don't know. It could be.
Octopussy? No.
I mean, it could be, but I'd have to freeze frame and go back.
Her hair is blonde instead of brown. But
you've got Valerie. That's Valerie Leon on that table. So she was in The Spy Who Loved Me, and she was in a few Carry On films. She's still around. Still looks great for her age. And then we have Rosalind Lloyd playing Roger Moore's girlfriend. So this is the daughter of Ewan Lloyd, right? And what I wouldn't give to get Rosalind on my podcast for an interview, tracking her down has proved really difficult. And I suspect probably because she's done with the film industry and she spent a big chunk of her life in it. She has several bit parts in several of her dad's movies. She's Lewis Collins' wife in the film Who Dares Wins, which is also available on YouTube. And you know, she always does roles that are within her range. And I mean, I can't say whether she's a greater actress than that or not, because I've never seen her in a leading part. But there was always a family sense about a Ewan Lloyd production. He would use a lot of the same people. He would use a lot of the same supporting actors. You know, Kenneth Griffith was in a lot of his films.
This lady's gorgeous. Yeah. Green gray eyes, huh?
Yeah. I mean, oh yeah, Rosalind Lloyd, very glamorous, beautiful woman. In this
Well,
next
not for
sequence,
much longer in this movie.
well, yeah, indeed. I mean, this is all.
Look at how they live. Look at how they live. Just
I
smoking
think.
a cigar, drinking, and just watching the door with your gun.
I think the interiors of this movie, they, you know, before we get to Africa, do let the film down a bit.
Yes.
It's very, you know, okay, we're in a studio set now. You can really see we're in a studio set, probably shot at Pinewood. And
In my mind, what went through my mind to justify it was this is post World War II London. Everything's not built back up yet. Some
oh
pieces
no,
quite
yeah, I mean it
terrible.
looks correct. It looks all that horrible, dreadful
Just
wallpaper and stuff. We had all that in
right.
our house, you know.
Excellent.
And I mean, you know, the furnishings and all of that are pretty accurate. It's not that. It's just that the lighting is a bit flat. It's not. It could have been. I think the set stuff, the interior, it's fine. It's adequate for the film, but it is the part of the film that's aged more.
Who
Whereas
knows where
all
they're
the
from.
exterior stuff could have been shot yesterday. You know.
This looks great. And by the way,
Yeah.
I have to interject just for 1 second. Have we not just fallen a long way as far as amazing clothes? And we see somebody get killed in that Matt Damon spy movie in this movie, the Good Shepherd. This is a famous location.
Well, this is by the River Thames. Got the actor Jeff Corey in this scene in the car on the left here. Some people might remember that he was the leader of the people on the planet in the film Battle Beyond the Stars with Roger Corman, you know, the last of the seers kind of thing.
Hi, Wes.
And I always feel a bit sad when his character gets killed when I watch that movie, even though it's a cheesy film. Still,
Between you and me, are you just like, do you look at Sir Edward here and just be like, man, can I just have hair like that when I hit 70?
I mean, yeah, the actor who plays Sir Edward Matheson, Stuart Granger, great choice.
When what a career!
Yeah, amazing career. This is obviously towards the end of his career, but now this scene here. I mean, how shit is this door for somebody to be able to do what Harris does? This would have broken his hand without a doubt. You know, he smashes the door and drops the grenade into the corridor. Why not just open the door and drop the grenade into the corridor and then shut the door?
What I love is the grenade seemed to have a volume control. He's like, let me set this one to 2, because later on we're going to see grenades that like blow buildings apart almost.
And that guy at the bottom of the staircase who shouts out the contract's lifted, he would go on to have a massive role in EastEnders, which is a huge British television soap. And he's a well-known character actor. So you've got people like that, like Suzanne Danielle, who went on to have a massive career. She's one of the girls at the disco. You know, there's little people here and there. George Leach, he's another very well-known character actor who's one of the henchmen in the scene we've just seen. Gets blown up in the corridor.
Just quickly, what do you think of the choice of Sean having just a pure British accent and being Roger Moore's voice? Was it because of expectations? Because I think he's capable of affectating a convincing Irish accent, but they're like, listen, people want Roger Moore.
Look, Roger Moore never saw himself and I was lucky enough to meet Roger, by the way, about a year before he passed away, and I took my copy of Wild Geese with me, and he wasn't signing anything but his book, unfortunately. But I told him, I met Richard Harris. The only one I didn't meet was Burton, who died in '84. But
we were pretty young. I don't know. In the private chat, I'm going to unveil a number, and you can just tell me whether or not it relates to you too, because I think we're coming at this from about the same point in time.
I'm a couple of years below that, but yeah, my 53rd birthday is coming up this year.
Happy birthday!
You've got to remember that I was deathly skilled at convincing my parents into letting me watch films that were wildly inappropriate for my age.
You're 6 years
Because
old when this came out, so maybe you're 7 or 8 when it hits TV. Yeah, you're not ready.
I would
So
have
you're about 10 or
been
12.
seven. I would have been 7 probably.
I would want my smart 10-year-old to see this before I would want like anyone younger. That's like
But I
that's
was,
the,
I
the
was,
bottom of it.
I was really like, you know, you gotta. Movies were my thing. They were my hobby as a kid. I had 2 hobbies as a kid: movies and Lego. And then what I used the Lego for was to construct things I'd seen in the movies. So it all revolved around the movies, really. This is I met this actor as well. This is Patrick. He did a lot of commercials,
A
including
pal
one
with
for,
a fantastic beard here. It's a
yeah,
fantastic beard.
Patrick Allen, who plays Rushton. This great scene, incidentally, because I love the friction.
And we
in
got a
this
nice
scene.
fake country here with a believable name. Zambala.
Yeah, yeah.
Landlocked Zambala. Is it
Well,
by Wakanda, I wonder?
it's all based on the war in the Congo and what
Right.
was going on at that time, and there were a lot of mercenaries over there
Isn't the
fighting.
mission
And
maybe and the airport aspect that's inspired by what is it? Is it Sierra Leone, a coastal nation off the east coast of Africa that they tried to the same mercenary group that trained the people and inspired this story. They did really go operational at one point, and the whole thing, if I remember correctly, went sideways when they had a brilliant plan: sneak the weapons in golf bags. And when they got there, people were like, "Why would you bring these here? We don't have any golf courses in our country." And the airport just turned into a shootout, and they somehow managed to negotiate their way out of that.
that sounds like a good plot for a movie. There was
Someone should do a
there was
documentary of the true story. Actually, yeah.
there was there was this thing called a very British coup, and there was a load of mercenaries. Most of them were South African, but they were led by a British guy who was a film advisor on a couple of movies, not this one. And they all got caught and ended up in prison. I think they're all back home now, but yeah.
So this is the should we walk moment, by the way. It's like, oh, by the way, we're not going to give you time to train. Here's the money. Bye.
Yeah.
Why didn't any of them say anything? They're like, hold on a minute. And they're like, we got to talk to each other. You know what I mean? It's like, I would be like, you know what? You just changed a lot of this mission. I either want a lot more money or I want out, and I'm taking some of this money because you mess with me.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I love this scene where he starts reading out the fees. You know, £100,000 for you, £50,000 for Janders, etc., etc., etc. My God, these amounts are outrageous. That's exactly what I said. You sign here and here, and I mean that money back then was a huge, huge amount of money.
At that point, I think the currency differentiation was the pound was like maybe $3 or $4.
Yeah,
American bucks.
He's
making a lot of money. He's talking about like $700,000-800,000. Like, just give me the freaking money.
Well, 100 grand for Faulkner's fee, that'd be well over $1 million, probably 2 million today.
Yeah, my guess was 750,000. Yeah, okay, so 1.3 million.
Yeah,
back of the hand economics.
1.5.
This set, which is a real hotel room, simply set up to look like a hotel room, is one of the best sets they've had so far.
I'm not convinced. That could well be a set with the building you're seeing through the window could actually just be a like a framed backdrop.
Yeah, that is still a possibility. I guess the thing is, a generic hotel room really lends itself to the kind of environment they're in. But this
is a real street. We're introduced to the RSM. I mean, this whole next sequence is basically let's set up all the supporting characters now, and
it's a great putting the band back together sequence.
Yeah, it's really good, and because you get straight away the relationships really quickly. Like as soon as he arrives and he tells him he's here for a mission, you know, where do I report and when? It's like he goes straight into military mode. You understand the relationship between the two of them. You know that they fought together before. You know they've been through things before. You know they're very close friends.
He understands himself. He doesn't go onto his property or try to go to the house. He knows the wife hates him.
Yeah.
He behaves like an unclean spirit almost, doesn't he? Who's aware, a very self-aware, unclean spirit.
Yeah, I mean, also the actress that they got to play the wife, I think it's Jane Hilton. you know, and a good actress.
Great.
She died
Got to
sadly
be
quite.
difficult.
She died sadly quite young. She died in 79, only a couple of years
That's
after
terrible.
this.
They
But the
say
fact,
there are no small parts, just small actors. But that tiny
yeah,
role, she got across so much contempt for him. That was
yeah,
great for his character.
exactly. That one line. Yes, I see. I hope I never see him again. I mean, it just says everything, you know, about that. So, and then now, of course, we have he was the last of the leading cast to
Here's
pass
our
away.
epic Hardy Kruger.
Yeah,
He's in so many great movies, so many great war movies, so many great roles as a German.
yeah. I mean, he lived until 2022,
What is that?
and he lived until he was 93. He retired in South Africa. I spent some considerable time trying to track him down. He lived on a farm in South Africa, basically.
How do you like our birthday present, Tim? We're getting you expert analysis on your favorite movie from someone who's also is their favorite movie. Isn't that great? The stars aligned for this one, thanks to RRTN said. I want some of that beer. It looks really good. That was one of the better, more effective shots in the movie. Every beer on camera looks great. Are
Yeah,
they corporate?
I think this set. I might be wrong, but I think it's the same interior used to shoot a TV show called Minder, and they had a set for a pub in that, which they, you know, it was a permanent set for quite a long time. I have a feeling this is the same set, but I could be wrong.
£30,000. So he's getting equivalent about, say, I guess $225,000, $250,000.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, a few $100,000. That'd be
300,000. Yeah.
This is a great sequence as well.
I love that. Yes.
This is the actor Ian Yule. This is the guy who actually was one of Mad Mike Hall's mercenaries. This guy.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was military trained. He knew how to use all the weapons. He was a bit of a you know, he had de facto other jobs on the set, shall we say, and I think he was very well looked after in the sense that, you know, he was there from beginning to end.
Here's the thing. He sticks this acting performance. I guess he's playing himself, but I love
pretty
it.
much.
You know, it's very close to George Patton's moment in The Patton, where he's like, you know, why do you do this? And it's like, because I love it.
Right. So this actor, this actor is a friend of mine. So this is John Canai. Yeah, this is John Canai, who I've met. He's an incredible stage actor, and him and Winston Shonda, who I've also met, who sadly passed away a few years ago, were very close friends, and they agreed to do the film together. And you've got to remember, these are two black South African actors agreeing to do a film at the time of apartheid, height of apartheid, that's going to partly film in South Africa. And it was John Canai who talked Winston into doing it. They were both extremely well-known black South African stage actors. They've had several plays. They've written several plays together. One of the most famous ones is called Sinzwe Banzi is Dead. Fantastic play about somebody trying to get identification so they can vote in South Africa as a black man, you know, during apartheid. And they did another play called The Island. And these were all two-handers, which they wrote for them to be in, you know. And I was at the bar at the National Theatre, having gone to see a play that a friend of mine was in, because you've got 3 theatres in the National Theatre. And I go up to get a drink, and there's these 2 black guys at the bar, you know, and I'm like, standing there, and I'm looking at them, and they're talking, and I'm like, you were both in the Wild Geese. And they're like, yes, we were. And I'm like, oh my God, I hired out a cinema to show that film on my birthday about 5 years ago. Because I think I did that in 2001. And I think I met them. Oh, I can't remember, but it might have been, I maybe only met them a couple of years later. It was early 2000s I met them. And I've been in touch with John Canai since then. And I was due to go and see a play of his and meet him afterwards. And that play was cancelled because of COVID. This is Kenneth Griffiths. I've met him as well. He was writing his biography when he passed away, and I had a meeting with his agent about representation. And as a result of that meeting, I got to meet him. So
the weird Omen overtone going on here with him and Rennie. It's just
it's the same location, I believe.
Is it? Wow. I feel
Yeah.
like there's a lot going on. We have the same kind of, aesthetic in the same location, apparently. If not, somewhere very, very close. And yeah, guys, Lance is really out here out of the passion for this movie. So get all you can. He is fighting off that flu. He's got Regilian flu. It's going around my ship.
So the music, let's talk about the music here briefly, because you've got like Emil's theme in this thing. And by the way, I've got the vinyl soundtrack to this, which I'll go on camera briefly to show you in a little bit. But this is done by Roy Budd. Roy Budd was a very well-known British composer. Sadly, died very young. Died at the age of 46 in 1993. But he did the very famous score for the original Get Carter. And he did the score for the Sea Wolves, which was another very much kind of Ewan Lloyd production. And it took me ages to get the soundtrack for this, because it kind of came and went in the music stores, and I couldn't get it. And eventually, when I started going up to central London on my own, I found this place called 59 Dean Street Records, and all they sold were soundtracks and imported soundtracks. That was all they sold, and musicals. And in the racks, there it was, the Wild Geese soundtrack. And I was like, shit, right, I'm buying this, and snapped it up. He also did a number of scores on a number of other movies that I really like the music for. He did the score for Who Dares Wins, which again I think is a really strong score. Paper Tiger, which is one of my favorite David Niven movies, and Kidnapped with Michael Caine. So yeah, now we shift to
our fantastic scene. By the way, I just want to say, when Richard Harris was there, do you think he stopped off to talk about possibly coming back in the future as principal and getting House Slithering in order?
Well, I met Richard Harris the night after the screening of the second Harry Potter movie in the pub, and I talked to him about. Of course, the only thing I talked to him about was this film.
Did he still have passion for it? I heard all the principals had some passion for the project, and
no,
that he wanted to be a more tough guy than they let him be in Bond.
I think everybody kind of, it's funny because any kind of film reviewer under the age of 40 gives this film a hard time. They say the film is only liked by, older white men of a certain age. And I've got to put my hand up and say, okay, I'm guilty as one of those. By the way, if you look in the background here, you can see, if you see the hill in the background, you can see that this is only a few yards away from where they filmed the end sequence with the runway and all of that. So all of this is filmed very close together, just out of interest. It's all in the same area. I'll show you some of that in a sec. This scene as well was heavily edited for British premiere on television. All the expletives were redubbed, so they were
a quick look at what would be a Full Metal Jacket dynamic for the first time here, really, in a big movie. So I heard that the stunt was really hard for Burton, or whatever, just throwing himself down the ground was real hard.
Burton only threw himself down like I think once or twice, and he hated shooting this movie. And the reason he hated it was because they had to wear, British combat gear in the heat. This is not desert DPM. They've also got boots on, socks on, and if you look, they've all got scrim or combat scarves. So I can tell you now, you're going to absolutely sweat your balls off. If you look at in some of the shots, you can see how much later in the day it is, and then in some of the shots, it's much earlier when you look at the configuration in the sky.
Yeah, it's not very consistent to the amount of daylight.
I mean, it's
around the day.
Fine. Yeah, it's not a criticism of the.
No, it's not major, but yeah, you can see their process here. And by the way, how do you not love this Sergeant Major or whatever you want to call
Oh
him?
yeah, he's so great. Right, this line was cut. This line was cut. So that line was cut from TV. On your feet, you effing abortion. It just went, I can't get up, sir, I'm dead. He pulled out the gun. That was it. So, when I was watching it for the first time on video and suddenly heard those lines, I was like, oh, that wasn't in it before.
So do you think the intent here was that the writers themselves didn't feel that drinking a few beers was really drinking, or was it that he was lying to get the money and he's going to drink anyway?
No, I don't think they really drank alcohol in any of these scenes. That's probably apple juice.
No, I don't mean the actors. I mean the characters.
In the story, well, they're still weeks away, so a beer at the end of a hard day's training, I'm sure is fine. I can't remember.
It's not dishonorable. His pledge just is a pragmatic one of its time. By the way, of its time, this would be considered honest by anyone in its time.
In the novel, there's a couple more main characters that are not in this movie, and I think it's good that they dropped them because it's 2 characters too many. There's another character who's very similar to Janders, and it's good that they kind of dropped him.
Well, we had our most diverse and interesting. Well, to today's modern audiences, we had a character who was just plain old gay. I mean, he came in, and he's not a DEI hire or anything.
No. I mean,
he's a violent and dangerous asset on his own.
One of the things that's really interesting about this film was it was the first time I'd seen a movie, first of all, set in Africa. It was the first time I'd seen black male actors in fairly significant roles. It was the first time I'd seen a film about a bunch of white guys going to rescue a black guy. Now, there were lots of protests when this film premiered. They had protests in Leicester Square and stuff like that. But this film actually did quite a lot, certainly for me. And I think at the time, it did quite a lot to sort of propagate unity. And there's a line on a billboard in the movie later, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. And that scene was originally a lot longer, and they cut it down. So again, it wasn't so social messaging. But the line is, we need each other, white man. That's the way it should be. We need to learn to work together. Otherwise, there's no future for us. And I mean, that line's more true now than it ever was. And I think the film is great for that message. I think it's good for that message.
There's absolutely no awkwardness in that line, which could be heavy-handed or could be construed as heavy-handed out of context. When you see them performing it, it is absolutely compelling when he says it.
Yeah, I think the only thing that lets that scene down is they cut to a shot of Jesse, John Canai, suddenly kind of giving it a big smile, and it's a little bit cheese. But
I just want to apologize for misidentifying Emile as Rennie. Sorry, one diminutive French kid name for another. I apologize to the audience.
Emile. I wondered who Rennie was, but I figured
I messed up in my mind. Rennie is Picard's nephew.
So this guy jumping now. This is Glyn Baker. Okay, this is the son of Stanley Baxter from Zulu. Who played the other leading role opposite Michael Caine. You'll also remember him.
You mean the chief engineer who has the date of brevet on him.
Well, you'll also remember him from Return of the Jedi as the guy who says "fire" with the Death Star.
Oh,
the
awesome!
half-built Death Star. He's the guy. Yeah, he's the sort of the Death Star gun commander, if you like. And
they didn't carry the map very well that they jumped on right there, by the way.
In an interview, he said that that job alone paid for his flat in London. Because working on a Star Wars film paid quite well. The actor who played Jock, he loved to smoke his weed. Would be quite stoned a lot of the time, but he still was
Hats off
fine.
to that.
Yeah, so all of the cast were under the drinking ban. I think it. In order for it to work, it basically had to be for everyone.
Well, they threw these guys in the middle of nowhere where they couldn't get to booze, it seems like.
And you've got 10 or so of the top British stunt guys in the core group of mercenaries. They were also all in Bridge Too Far. They did Bridge Too Far, and then they did this movie back to back.
We just saw a throwaway stunt in their training scene where that guy literally was put up on that log as they raised it. And then he dropped a good long bit that the camera didn't catch, but it was just hit. This is what we do all day. It was very, very good for the believability of how tough these guys are. And I just, again, I love that their DEI hire he's not a DEI hire at all. He just happens to be these things. No. But he's like a very good medic, and man, when it's time to be violent and deadly, he doesn't mind that at all either.
No, I thought it was medic. And I didn't. I actually had to ask my parents to explain his character to me, and they said he's gay, and I said, "What does that mean?" You know. So, so it was the first gay character I ever saw in anything. Also,
note have a great wardrobe.
Note in this scene that you've got an Uzi very conspicuously hanging on the back of the wall. I don't think experienced soldiers would leave a firearm like that in the office. This would be the officer's mess.
Right.
So the reason that it's there is quite simple. It's product placement. Look at it on the back wall there. See, hanging there.
Yeah, it's not very secure. The one thing I do believe is to have that picture of that hot chick that's behind Faulkner. I wonder what he's going to tell Sandy here. Let's have our little conversation.
Yeah, this is a good scene. I really like this scene, and it also shows that Faulkner is not about the money, or not just about. I mean, obviously he wants the money, but again, it's that whole themes of loyalty, honor.
Yeah, he's a man of his word. He has some honor, and none of them will do stuff that like is really brutally, overly exploitive of people. They're like, well, if one person wants to topple another government, someone else is going to do it. But as far as trading drugs, I'm not going to be down with that. And stuff like that. We saw their morals laid out very well. They're admirable. This guy's going to show an admirable avuncular side.
Jack Watson was like very, very about fitness as a guy in real life, and you know, he would be like encouraging all the other actors to get up and go running with him and stuff like this. And you know, Richard Harris and Richard Burton would like they would hide from him, so they didn't have to go on one of his long jogs. Yeah.
Context here: Liz and Dick are back together at this moment, aren't they? Or they're just about to get remarried, aren't they?
I'd have to check that. You've got Percy Hobart there.
Warhol Diaries says that.
That's Percy Hobart on the right there. The black extra, by the way, who was in that scene, who also was just getting on the truck, I think also that was the stuntman who doubled for any of John Canai and Winston LaShonda's scenes. Yeah, I love this. Enjoy yourselves. Yeah. I'll be back here with bandages and penicillin. Have your bums ready.
Exactly. Well, they're going to go have a very irresponsible good time.
So imagine... So you got the scene, well, I call it the cardigan scene. It's quite funny. I remember when I hired the movie out, when it cut to this scene, people laughed because of Burton's cardigan. It's funny, like, I wonder why he wore this, but you know why? It was because they were both all in green, and they just wanted to make him look a little bit different. So it was probably Burton's suggestion. But this scene
adds a certain believability to him too. It's like, I'm done with work for the day. I'm going to put on a more comfortable sweater like Mr. Rogers. And
I mean, the whole point of this movie, which some people, you know, young people who watch this movie now go, "Oh, this movie's crap because these guys are so old." That's the whole point of the film. They are supposed to be old. They're supposed to be over the hill. The reason he doesn't want Sandy to go on the mission is he's worried about Sandy having a heart attack because he's one of the oldest men there. So.
Sandy's having none of it. He loves the men. He's got a fatherly side. The wild geese that I guess they fly, birds of a feather is inferred in here. They're all cut from the same cloth.
So this was the scene that played right before the news. So imagine I'm watching it as a kid, and then suddenly it cuts just before this with the plane, and it cuts, and it's like Wild Geese continues after news at 10, and then my mum turns around. And it's like, right, up to bed you go. And I'm like, no!
Oh, God. They're ready to go. Yeah, right? You just watched the pregame of this movie. Bless you. Really quickly, guys, this is one of the things that maybe modern critics might go after him for. It's supposed to be night. We can tell it's day, but this was really acceptable in the time of like a day for night sort of scene. It stays dusk throughout the entire night in this movie.
There's a fair bit of that goes
Normal
on.
at the time, it's now deeply frowned on, and we had split screen like in Carrie and stuff too. So it's a wild choice by today's standards. So critics are unkind to this. Meanwhile, like they'll call black and white charming and sepia tone endearing, but you have to remember in the 70s this was acceptable, and also it got their insurance down, which you were saying was hard to get. And bless you, my friend, you need to get a drink.
So while we're flying to whatever the Zambala. By the way, when you work out approximately where the country would be, it would actually be Uganda, or it would be where Uganda is when they talk about the different escape routes. So,
yes.
So let me show you a couple of things. Just need to close some windows here. Yeah. I've got a terrible habit.
Yeah, Lance is right on. This has been a fascinating view.
So this is where the production was predominantly based when they were filming in South Africa, right up near the border with Zimbabwe, which at the time of filming was Rhodesia, right?
So I love how we break out our bling weapon, by the way. Yes.
Yeah, lots of shots of Uzis in the travel sequence. But yeah, if you
love how the real mercenary keeps sticking it in the acting. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, if you want to share the screen for a second with the thing I put up. Yeah, so this is where it was filmed, and this place called the Sagoli Spa. This is actually where the actors stayed when they were filming. So you can see how this is a hotel. So these are like little kind of individual hotel huts. This is the main entrance to the Sagoli Spa. This is where they put most of the people up, and then you had a few buildings here. Now you see where this new school is that's been built here. That before that was where there was an old school, and this hill is one of the hills you see in the background a lot of the time, and it was just around here is where they built the prison compound, and also where they were training. Those two locations were really close together. The one place I haven't been able to find out definitively is the airport strip, but I suspect, bearing in mind that this is 77 we're talking about, the airport strip was probably on this bit of flat land here. So all of those locations would have been very, very close together. This is the bridge, and this is the dry riverbed, which is coming up later. And
we're going to see that's where we get air rated.
Yeah. So that's the other one. And it's funny because...
Let me check Cosme. Cosme looks good right now. If anybody's Cosme's down, just hit refresh, guys. Sorry, Lance.
No, that's right. Anyway, I'll take that off for now. But I'm always interested to know where things are.
Oh, we put it up on the we put it up in the studio. Lance was showing us the Google Earth location. There's a school now on the location, and we saw the most likely place for the runway. And I'm inclined to agree. Why wouldn't it be in the most, logical place?
Well, I mean, it's said to have been in Tishapali, which is the town we're looking at. I can't see a runway there now, but there probably was at the time. So, and there's various other things nearby that look like they might have been used. I love this piece of music. So this is the people that did this airdrop for them. This was like the British parachute display team.
They got some serious cooperation from the government. It looks great. Look at this jump.
I think they were already out there on a training exercise because British troops train in Africa all the time, and I think they either coincided it or they flew them out there.
We have some really well done training film,
something like that.
Yeah, wash it day to night. That's a pretty. That looks like a painful opening shock, as they call it, when we actually saw the parachute open and the individual in the parachute feel the shock of it pulling taut.
Yeah, so the this area of Africa is what's known as Northern Transvaal. So it's near the Messina border region with what would have been Rhodesia back then.
Okay,
And
yeah.
they basically the unit took over all of Teshipsea, and all the cast and crew were put up in Teshipsea for all of the African filming, and that the filming took place towards the end of the summer of and most of the autumn of '77, and then they came back and did studio filming at Twickenham Film Studios, not Pinewood, in Middlesex.
The chat had that a little earlier. I just highlighted it. Thanks for confirming.
Yeah. So yeah, we're shooting day for night here and going with kind of like certain you put filters on the lenses back then to make everything look a bit darker. I think we got the famous ostrich scene coming up. Now, the guy with the radio, by the way, that's the guy who played Harrod in Where Eagles Dare. He was Richard Burton's personal PA. And Richard Burton had it in his contract that if he did a movie, they had to pay for him to come with Burton. And if there was a role for him, he was always to be given a role. And he's a perfectly good actor. There is a rumor that he was Richard Burton's boyfriend. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But there is quite a lot of there's quite a lot of voices who say that he may well have been Burton's longtime companion. Not that Burton wasn't a ladies' man; he was a ladies' man. But
Burton's extensively written about in the Andy Warhol diaries. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I mean, look, back then, a lot of people in the theatrical arts batted for both teams. Was fairly common, So
this movie had DEI without trying.
Yeah. I love this whole scene with the crossbow and of course,
it's the world's meanest crossbow. There's also cyanide in the shaft, which is it's so mean.
So if the bolts don't kill you, the cyanide will.
And you won't cry out no matter what. It's the ultimate phaser.
I mean, in the 70s, I don't think you had long-range rifles with the kind of suppressors that you've got on them now. This crossbow sequence always did feel a bit gimmicky for me, but it does work though.
It's badass.
Yeah,
it's so badass.
Kind of cool, And of course, after seeing this film, we all wanted to own crossbows, right? And believe it or not, me and my dad built one, and we basically got a piece of wood. We shaped it so it had like an armrest and stuff, and we got a curtain rail, and the curtain rail was the bit that bent. So it was the bit you pulled back with a kind of like a nylon cord. And then we had these pieces of wood that could hold the bolts in place, and you pulled the bolts up. They were like the trigger. It was quite cool, really, considering I built it as a kid. I had 2 or 3 of them. I built like 2 or 3 of them, I think.
That is cool. By the way, I love the last guy. He's got to like make a quick shot because after taking out guard 1 and 2, guard 3's like, why are guard 1 and 2 laying there like they might just be dead?
One thing I've never been able to find is a photograph of all the black extras that were used on this film. And that was another thing, even though, this was shot during apartheid and all the rest of it. A lot of people, a lot of black South Africans got work on this film, both in crew production and, they probably utilized, I would think, at least 100 extras.
Well, the filmmakers seem to be at least, to a degree anti-apartheid, making a statement through that, right?
It is very anti-apartheid, absolutely. That's the thing that now this location, that school that I just showed you, I'm 90% certain this is the location that school is built on now. And
This was the
basically,
previous school.
this
In, like, the
basically this would have been
abandoned phase.
this location would have been a school. You know, and they would have erected fences around it and made it look more military and kind of put signs up and built the gun towers and all of that. And but yeah, I mean, I've been to Africa many times, and schools basically look like this, without the barbed wire, you know. Yeah, and they would have had assistance. They may well have had assistance from the Rhodesian army. It's entirely possible.
Let's just say it right here. It's in the chat. This guy is clearly a Mandela-like, or if not Mandela cutout character, but he's not a bad character. He has his own traits. But yeah, he's based on what happened to Mandela and the whole Mandela thing.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, at the time that this came out, you know, the imprisoning of Mandela was a massive story. Winston Nshonda
He was
looks
just
a bit
one man
like
in a large army with shoes too small to fit his feet, or so I've heard it said.
I mean, Winston Nshonda, who plays Limbarni, was friends with Mandela. You know, both John Carney and Nshonda both knew Mandela. Well, they were big actors on the South African acting scene. You got to think South African.
This is
black
the most
theater.
messed up scene, by the way, guys.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead, and then we have to talk about the cyaniding of all these guys. That not very sporting. It's really, really cold.
I mean, yeah, I remember sort of like being quite shocked by this whole sequence because there's that famous line in the film. What do you mean? You intend to kill them all? And he's like, well, you know, can you think of a better way?
By the way, I like as a Cuban myself, I think it's appropriate the Cuban's in charge here. You know, he's from a place where they've been training people to be terrible for a while, and he's lead terrible guy. Makes sense to me. That tracks.
Yeah, so
he's got some commie gear on. He had the red star on that hat.
I don't know how common it was for Cubans to sort of be in the Congo and places like that, but listen, I'm sure
they were out there as military advisors. He was trying to export communism very hardcore for a long time. Yeah, and hello to everyone.
I can believe.
Please hit the likes here. My guest is Lance Nielsen. He's an expert on this movie. It just gets more and more action-packed. Check the pinned post. It's a great film, and hit like and follow.
This is the first time like weapons are fired in Africa, right? In the story, and all of the action in this film from Africa onwards is spot on. The editing, the use of sound, you know, real squibs, real blanks, no CGI, none of that. The actors look like they know how to use and hold the guns, and that's because they were all trained by people that knew what they were doing. I mean, this whole sequence is so well done. And then, you know, it's like, okay, tell Lieutenant Flynn to take the airport. We got the wonderful score by kind of Roy Budd sort of emphasizing, yeah, it's going well. And it's got that very positive, uplifted beat. And I also like Winston Nshonda here. He's kind of in a bit of a daydream. He's like, what's going on? Who are these people, you know? Because he's not expecting a rescue.
Yeah, it's a good performance by this guy. This Mr. Limbarni's performance is deeply believable. And
yeah, I mean, Winston, fantastic actor. I'm so honored I got to meet him just that one time.
And here he is using the politically incorrect terms from Lethal Weapon 2, I think it is.
I've got it. I mean,
the K word.
One of my missions this year is to get John Canai on for an interview for a podcast.
I can't wait to hear that.
I like this. You've got some sort of random political prisoners of, you know, that's probably like relatives of various crew members. Hey, get in this cell, do this shot. I love this shot here where they pull back, reveal pretty much the whole camp. Everybody's running, getting on the trucks.
It is a beautiful shot.
Yeah, it's all really well done. And the music's great. Love the music. You know, it's got that sort of driving sense of urgency. Da-na-na-na-na. Yeah, I know this film off by heart. I could quote it backwards, literally. But you can tell how, if you study the film over and over and over and over, you start spotting some of the hill landmarks in the background of certain shots, and you start realizing, oh yeah, this location is not actually that far from this other location. Like that hill in the background on the right there, that was in the background of the last shot we just saw.
And as we can see, Zimbala Airport is in the most happening part of town. You can just go from Zimbala to the casino, see a boxing match, and maybe a soccer game before you go. What a middle of nowhere dump this small country kind of is.
Yeah. Now I haven't been able to find out whether this little airport control tower, which is pretty typical of the design you would have had at that time, I haven't been able to find out if that was constructed for the film or if it was real. I felt these when they shoot these guys with the silencers, it was a little bit naff. They could have had a bit of smoke come off the barrel or something there. But anyway, I'm nitpicking.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I'm nitpicking.
You know what?
It's fine. It's fine.
Moore still sells a lot of it. And again, like the Wild Geese, like, you're a little too old. We'll look the other way.
Yeah.
You're gay. Are you a good medic? Well, we don't care. I love how it was coincidental to the character. It didn't feel forced. And like at this point, there was like probably a case to be made, like, just by putting this character in the movie, we're making a statement. We don't have to have him be anything but cool, aside from like whatever traits he has. He just has to be competent and cool, and he has to belong there. And he very much belongs here.
Now, this sequence here, one time I thought that actually maybe it was shot at the interiors at Twickenham, but if you look in a couple of shots, you can actually see, like that shot there, you can see that the background outside is South African. So pretty sure they filmed this on location, built this whole set. Extremely well done sequence.
This grenade much more powerful than our previous grenade in England.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of action films like this anymore. Where
people are saying what I thought was a Cuban was an East German. All right.
Yeah, probably the only uniform available.
We probably have a couple of both floating around in the area in real life. Both of those countries were exporting communism militaristically at the time and causing problems for fun. It's good to see Gavin Blackburn. Thank you for joining us, Gavin. Guys, we got a treat for you. Lance is probably the foremost expert in the world on this movie. Well, we got him here.
I don't know about the world, but I certainly know a lot about it.
We would have to get a bunch of people together at the same time to be able to speak on the same level as you. By the way, just for our audience, a bunch of things are going on that I guess the Wild Geese don't know. They're the backup plan for this negotiation not going through. And the negotiations went through. Whatever dirty deal Sir Edward was cutting has been culminated. And now the Wild Geese are going to cut loose because they're useless. And we'd like to save half our money, wouldn't we?
I mean, this is what's great about this film, is it's so beautifully set up that, and you know, as a kid, I'm watching it, you know, the mission is going according to plan. None of the good guys have been killed. They've made it to the airport. It's all going very well. And and then I suddenly saw that scene and I'm like, what's going on there? And I'm sure that's one of the times when I must have said to my mum and dad, what's happening there? Dad, just keep watching, you know, because my parents I don't think they'd been to the cinema to see this movie.
And, you know what? I really am interested. I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I was going to add, when you get a moment.
No, that's all right. One of the stuntmen that you can see in that shot when everyone's moving out to the runway is a guy called Rocky Taylor, who's he's a stunt legend. He's been around forever. He's also in Bridge Too Far. I'm trying to get him to come on the channel. This scene that they're showing now on the radio, this is the scene where they all kept laughing. And they had to retake. They had to refilming it, and there's famous outtakes of it. You can find it online.
There was a little admission right there by Roger Moore. Wild Goose, Iron Man. Sounds pretty racy.
Yeah, and that line was changed for the TV.
In
Because
America, it
he
doesn't
says
mean a lot.
sounds like a finger up a tin man's backside. That was
Yeah,
not the line. That was not the line in the ITV version that I
to
got.
Americans, we had to think for a minute because, like, that is like third tier slang. Like, you've heard it around, but it's not something you hear a lot. It might be regional.
Yeah.
Okay, there's the Cuban and there's a East German. That makes more sense.
I have to admit, if I'd been these pilots and I'd got on the runway and that call had come through, I would have said it's too late. They're already on board. I just would
And I
have.
also would have said to them, guys, if you want to know what really happened and why we're here, give me a few $100,000 more because the guy who hired me ain't going to be around if I tell you why I'm here.
Yeah.
But this was a great tease, though.
Now this is the same runway that's used for every shot in the movie. It's just that they are very clever about how they film with it. But
Gavin, you have to thank RRTNZ. This was his doing, but yes, I have today the best guest for this movie.
Yeah, that's right. Hardy Kruger was also in Bridge Too Far, so
yeah. Compare the performances. I'm supposing you love this movie better, but I think he gets such a good performance in Bridge Too Far.
I mean, I couldn't rank this film, over the other one or vice versa, because Bridge Too Far is a historical epic.
Epic, yes.
It's a history. It's a somber history lesson with amazing action sequences. This is a action drama fiction that's based in a grounded enough reality to make it believable, but emotionally,
it's much more recent of the people. This was a possible current event rather than 25-year-old news when this movie comes out.
Emotionally, the Wild Geese is the one that will kick you in the feels every time, because emotionally, this is the one where you get
me when my apartment's heat went out last week. That's my face.
Yeah. So one of the actors in this group here, I'm trying to remember his name, but he's the guy who drives the truck that gets stuck on the bridge. And unfortunately for him, he told me this story on the phone. He said, well, the bridge scene was my last day of filming because I'm one of the few people that visually got killed off. And then, then you basically
seen before. Yeah, if you're an established face and people see your established face in this movie die, you can't show up again later as someone else pretending and cavorting around.
It was the same
with the mustache.
It was the same with Attenborough's army, or what they called the ABA, for Bridge Too Far. They all tried not to get their faces in key shots, otherwise they got what was called a KLM. In other words, they got sent back home on a KLM flight. And
you would hope the guy who ran to get the berets really got like a week's pay for that fantastic performance when he goes to retrieve the dropped supplies.
Yeah,
it's useless supplies.
That was actor John Waterhouse. He's still around.
What an amazing performance that is. In just a small part, the look of determination, frustration, and just like I'd rather die than go without food and see my buddies deprived. I'm going to go out there and do this.
But so going back to the movie, this when Janders lays it all out when they're trying to plan how to get the hell out, and Janders says, well, basically the only way to get out is a revolution, and they're like, come on, we can't do that. And he says, okay, well, let me put it to you rationally. These are our options. And that's where when he, if you know your geography of Africa, that basically makes the location of this country Uganda, effectively.
Right.
Yeah.
It had been implied. He's like, they took Nelson Mandela's story and they imposed it into Uganda.
I mean, it's a fictional, people in Uganda never thought this was supposed to be Uganda. I mean, my ex-wife was Ugandan. But my ex-wife, by the way, was a big fan of this film. And her parents also were big fans of this film. And it was generally very well received in African countries. So, because at the end of the day, you didn't get to see a lot of black characters being heroes, you know, in movies in the 70s, they were usually pimps or gangsters. In this film, you've got two of them front and center. You know, one of them is a key member of the mercenary force, and then the other one is the one they're going to rescue. And then even in the mercenary force, there's another black guy, who's
Yeah.
the one I told you about, who actually was the stunt double for the two leads. So, you know, so I think people have to understand the context and the timing under which this film was made at the time. Height of apartheid, lots of stuff going on in Africa, and they took that background, and you know, and the film is about shady white Western businessmen exploiting African contracts for their own ends. No change there, and a load of middlemen caught up in the middle of it, trying to rescue a man for a better day, and you know, on the sharp end of being backstabbed. Right. So this stone bridge here.
There we go. Yes.
This is the location I just showed you. Now, I think this actual bridge, I have a feeling it's I'm not sure if it's still there, if it's been demolished, or
For all we know, they made it for the movie because it's going to take a beating.
Oh, I mean, no, it was really there. It was a real location at the time.
Okay.
Because in the rainy season, this would be a proper river that they're crossing.
I follow. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to check to see the underside of it when the trucks explode. So the guy who is in the truck that breaks down, I'm trying to get you his name because I don't want it to be inaccurate. I can't remember if it might be John Alderson. No, John Alderson played Randy. Sorry, that's not him. Because he's uncredited in the he's uncredited, but he's on IMDb as a mercenary. And he basically, about a week before this, that's him there next to Tosh, with the Tash. He upset the producer, Ewan Lloyd. He basically upset the producer, and Ewan Lloyd said, "Right, you're playing the role of the guy in the truck when the truck breaks down," because they hadn't allocated that part. And you know, producers will be clever with shit.
Get out of here a little earlier.
Yeah, so you're going to die, so you're going back soon. And he was like, "Oh shit!"
It's an epic death. I love the pilot's eye view here. To put it in context for anyone listening later, we in our somewhat Uganda-like nation, what we have to presume here is not everybody's too keen on giving this guy weapons, so he has a civilian aircraft that's souped up and more than enough of a threat for our heroes here.
So actually, yeah, in third world countries, including South America, it was incredibly common for private civilian aircraft to be requisitioned by various dictators, and then they would install them with weapons, usually a machine gun of some type, sometimes some bombs.
We see the automobile version of it in Black Hawk Down, where they have the quote technical vehicle,
yeah,
recoilless rifle.
Now this scene
is messing them up pretty good. This is enough to suppress a bunch of peasants, by the way. Really good.
As a kid, by the way, this scene was absolutely devastating for me because I'm watching it, and I'm you know, 10 minutes earlier they were getting out, everybody was doing fine. Now suddenly, you know, everybody's getting shot up, and there's people dying.
Like a cryptocurrency scam. It was going okay for a few minutes, and then the rug got pulled.
I think they lose 22 guys.
Right, and they're a force of 80, right? So here we go.
No, 50. There's 50 of them, including everybody.
Okay, so we've been basically cut in half now.
These shots here with the guys on fire, right? And that other shot there could have been a miniature, but I'm not sure. So the shots here with the guys on fire, this was heavily edited, even before it was shown at the cinema, because it was so gory that they had massive concerns that it was just too. So to even get an 18 certificate, they had to cut loads out from this scene. I think the second unit director said that they cut, almost like 2 minutes or something from this sequence.
Has it been preserved? Will it ever be reintegrated, you think?
No, I wouldn't think so. No, because back then when you were done with stuff, it would just get binned, sadly.
Guys, let's hear it for Lance, man. He loves this movie this much.
Well, this scene as well, coming up now, was, I mean, for me as a kid, was absolutely traumatizing. I remember I've got a very vivid memory of my mother sort of looking over at me, like, with a look on her face, like, should I send him up to bed now? And I just kept completely still, didn't show any emotion, just carried on watching it. I was utterly mesmerized. How could it be that my hero, Richard Burton, was now going to have to execute a load of his own guys? And of course, in the practicality of it, that's what you had to do, because as he says, you can't leave them for the Simbas. And
Right.
you don't see it, but all you need
by lions. If they're not, this is the best thing you can do. These guys want this rather than the fate awaiting them too.
Yeah, and
it's
great
powerful. A great decision to go off and not show it up close because it's too demonic for his character to survive as a sympathetic character.
Yeah.
But the power of it off scene, it's sort of like is it Return of the King, where instead of just another battle scene when they go to fight the Nazgul before the ultimate battle at Pelennor Field, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Faramir and them charge out, and instead of the battle, we see Pippin sing.
Yeah.
This is it's a brutal story. The guys in the truck, it wasn't as gory and bloody as it was brutal, grotesque, and accurate, with no glamour of war at all. But here comes Whitty showing what he's made of.
Yeah. Well, this is the
let's just say Whitty's met George Michael in a few places.
Well, George Michael was a friend of mine, but that's a whole other story. So
he was a fantastic performer. Tell me about that in another show. Wow.
You get one of the nicest, most genuine people on the planet, and I'm honestly honored to have met him. But anyway, let's not go down that rabbit hole. So
about that one. Yeah, just to make a little joke.
This whole sequence here, with the Kaffir thing. As a kid, I'd never heard the word Kaffir. I didn't know what it meant, and it was basically it was the South African equivalent of the N-word. And I remember sort of the next day, asking my mum, what did this mean? And it wasn't until some time after this that I actually found out I was South African, or at least I was born there before I was adopted. And around the same time as this, I think maybe about a year later, and because of this film, I watched a documentary on the BBC which followed the lives of 3 people during the apartheid. One of them was a white South African police officer. The other one was his father and the daughter. So they kind of followed that family. And then they employed a black cleaner from a township who had her own guest quarters out the back, basically a shed. And then they followed her life when she went back to the township on the weekends. And you saw where she came from and how she lived and all this sort of thing. And that was a massive education for me after watching that documentary. And then, of course, Richard Attenborough's Cry Freedom, which came out in 88, I think. These were huge educational milestones for me in apartheid and all of that. This scene here between Peter Coetzee and Limbarni was originally much longer. If you listen to the commentary on the Blu-ray, and they edited quite a bit of it out so that it didn't come across as too preachy, as too, but this is basically this is the political scene in the film. So while they're rambling on with this, let me tell you this other story. So right, so I got to pitch Wild Geese 3, my storyline for Wild Geese 3, to Ewan Lloyd. I'll tell you how that came about. So I heard, because Wild Geese 2, let's face it, it's not a very good film. I was massively disappointed when I went to see it at the cinema. So anyway, so I'm he had a company called Light Horse Productions that were based in Richmond, and I heard a rumor Wild Geese 3 is to go into production next year. Right? It was on, I think it was in Empire Film Magazine or something like that. This would have been in the early 2000s, and they're going to set it in Africa. And I thought, great. And I did some digging to see who was writing it, because of course Reginald Rose was dead. And I decided, right, you know what? I've written a couple of scripts now. I'm gonna write to Ewan Lloyd and see if I can get the job. So I got the address for Light Horse Productions, and I wrote him a sort of strong, passionate letter about how much I loved the first movie. I already had a story for the film in my head, and I would welcome the chance to meet him and outline my proposal and, you know, put my hat in the ring as a writer. Didn't hear anything for about a month. Okay, so I'd completely forgotten I'd written the letter. And then around this time, this actor called Stephen Walters, who plays McGrath in Band of Brothers, who fires the bazooka a lot, he just finished filming Band of Brothers. He stayed at my house when he was filming that. And he was always prank calling me. He was always calling me and impersonating people and shit like this, because he could do all these different accents. So I get this phone call one afternoon. Is Mr. Nielsen there, please? And I'm like, this voice sounds so put on. This has got to be Stephen. So I was like, is that Mr. Walters by any chance? And this person went, no, it's not. Mr. Nielsen, please. And I was like, Steve, come on, man. I know it's you. And this guy on the end of the phone hung up. And I was like, fuck, who was that? Anyway, a few days later, phone rings again. Mr. Nielsen, please. I'm thinking it's that guy again. Okay, this is not Steve. Who is this? And I said, yes, Lance Nielsen speaking. Ewan Lloyd here. I got your letter. And I was like, oh, shit. And I was like, right. And he said, yes, blah, 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 blah. And he said, well, I don't know if Wild Geese 3 is happening now, but, you know, I understand you have a story. And I was like, yeah. And he said, right, well, why don't you pitch it to me? And now, of course, in my naivety back then, like if you had an agent, you'd say, well, can I submit it through my agent? That's what you would do, so that, you know, he then doesn't piss off and use your story. But of course, I was like put on the spot like there and then. It's Ewan Lloyd on the end of the phone. What are you going to do? So I was like, okay. So I pitched the story, and the story was this. Emil travels to Zambala to try and locate the grave of his dad. And we find out that the villagers from Limbarni's village basically recovered all the bodies of the mercenaries, and they bury them.
It's like a shrine. It's now called like Limbarniville or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Lindover's dead. The dictatorship's over. The country's gone through a period of change, and so this
angry priest.
So the idea was that the same actor, Paul Spurrier, would play Emil in his present age, and he's traveling to America to look for his dad's graveside, basically. And Roger Moore's character, Sean Finn, is still in touch with him, and John Canai's character goes with him to try and go back to the village to find out where he's buried. And not only do they find where he's buried, but they find that one of the other mercenaries is alive, who was wounded and is still alive. And so for a while, there's this, who's alive? But it turns out that the mercenary that's alive is just one of the guys that was like wounded trying to get onto the plane. He played dead, and then he was rescued by the villagers, nursed back to health, but just decided to stay in Africa, and married the girl who kind of looked after him. So that was like the backstory. Okay. During Emil's visit to the country, a coup takes place. Cut a long story short, he gets kidnapped, held to ransom on TV. So Sean Finn puts together a team to go back in and rescue him. And that was the plot for the film. And he said, "That's a really good idea." And I said, "Yeah, well, I'm quite good at it." And he said, "Well," he said, I don't think the third film's going to happen now, but I wanted to thank you for writing to me. And, you know, and he said, if it does happen, I'll come back to you. And I said, "Well, if you come back to me and tell me you want me to write that script," I said, "I can have it written for you in 6 weeks." So there you go.
Shame we didn't get that because it's a brilliant, lore accurate idea.
Yeah, I know. I thought it was pretty good.
I want to thank you for making a birthday wish come true from one of my oldest subscribers. He's really pleased with this show, and he's like very grateful to you for giving us all this information. He's loving it. So thanks a lot.
Oh, no problem, buddy. I'm very happy to oblige. So this scene was heavily cut for British TV. We did not get the red bursts, like, you know, when he fired, then you had those red puffs come up, which meant he actually killed somebody, he shot somebody.
Right.
And this whole sequence, by the way, from beginning to end, is brilliance, absolute brilliance. I love this. You know, I love the way they do that editing of the guy flying in the air, which is done on what's called a springboard or a pressure board. And
you see it done wrong in Commando, where you see the whole stunt sort of.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the thing, right? Is that the action in this show is very small, but this sequence, from where it starts with Whitty to where it ends with Peter, I would put it up.
Sacrifice, by the way. He's looking for him. Is he caught up in like how much he digs violence here a little bit too? Like Whitty's a badass on top of being a medic.
I mean,
he wants this fight, man.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with his character here. It does feel like a bit of an unnecessary stand at one point.
I feel like they're all a little fatalistic because they're beyond the last mission. They're like, we're just into this job, so whatever it takes to keep doing it. And if I don't make it, I die doing what I love.
So these shots of him getting hit with the what do you call those bladed weapons?
Those are South American. Yeah.
The only shot that we got was that shot of them through the bushes. And I think they deliberately shot that scene that way because they knew they were going to cut it for TV.
That last scene was unnecessary because it was an establishing shot in reverse. It was from far away.
But this whole sequence is great, where basically Peter and Jesse work together, you know, as a team to like delay and defeat these guys that are coming after them. All practical effects, very simple stunts. So what I was saying is this whole sequence from beginning to end, I'd put it up against any scene in any of the what is it called? The Invincibles or whatever the Stallone thing franchise.
Yeah.
And it emotionally way better because, you know, two key characters get killed in this sequence and you're totally invested in both of them. You don't want either of them to die. When they die, it's a shock. You know, it's traumatic. This whole scene with Burton here, which, by the way, he hated filming this sequence. He was, you know, because he had to roll around and all kinds of stuff. There's a sequence here where some guy gets shot in the throat. That was cut from telly as well. But this whole sequence is so well done.
How is Amazon doing at this movie? Because right before we came on, I was saying to Lance, depending upon where we watch this, we'll have a different experience. You have like several cuts of the movie. It's your passion. How's this version of the movie holding up for you?
I think, well, let's have a look here. Hold on. Yeah, so that shot there, that was cut from telly.
The neck hemorrhage.
Yeah, that's in Amazon, that shot. And then
we're watching the Amazon.
The sequence coming up, the blood dripping from the mouth, was heavily edited for ITV in 1978. I mean, I still, even with all the cuts that I was completely unaware of, absolutely loved the film as a kid, and to be honest, those cuts were probably justified for television back then because they knew lots of kids were going to watch it, even with it being on late. Yeah, this scene,
Hardy Kruger's run.
It's one of the most heroic scenes in any film ever. You know, I'd put
It's
this
kind of
up
legacy
there with,
too. We've seen this in other, like, you know, redone.
yeah, I'd put this in up there with Boromir's death.
I would agree. Also, maybe the death of Captain Miller in Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, oh yeah, probably slightly better than that, I would say.
I agree.
That's a bit more stagey, you know, with the angel music and all of that. It's very Spielberg. Don't get me wrong, it's good. Movie?
Yeah,
I just love this thing where he's like, you know, don't die, and he it's a long death scene, and sometimes long death scenes are terrible, but this one is really good. I love the way Jesse steps forward and Faulkner's like, no, because he knows he's done. And then
I think we reached the level of passion he didn't know he had for his future of his nation by meeting Limbarni, which Limbarni has almost like not quite Christ-like, but in a political sense. Like, you meet him, you have renewed faith that everyone can get along. He's just that great of a guy.
Yeah, the RSM here, you know, cuts to the chase. You can leave him now, Mr. Limbarni. He's dead. And then the music, dun dun, comes in. So good.
What is RSN? Royal Sergeant Major?
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Or Regimental Sergeant Major.
People were asking before, they thought it was Rhodesian Sergeant Major as well.
No, it's Regimental Sergeant Major.
We've got some pretty good gats left around, and I got to say this: it takes a real badass of a man to wear a beret like it's a baseball hat and really rock it and look like you're dangerous.
I mean, there's a real thing with how berets are worn in movies, and people are very, very, very on, you know, they're very particular about them being worn properly, and different regiments wear them fractionally different from each other. And I remember when we were filming Paratrooper, I was adamant to make sure people's berets were on correctly, but
right,
I said during action, if your beret gets moved, I don't care, because that is what would happen. Right, this scene here is interesting, right? Because this is where they're outlining the plan to try and trap them. And I've never seen a version of this scene with subtitles, and I would actually really like to know exactly what he's saying. I mean, it's pretty obvious what he's saying, but I still would like to see it. And I don't know why they didn't subtitle that scene, and it's no version of it, even with subtitles on, whether you put them on Amazon or whether you put them on the DVD or whatever. There's no subtitles for that scene in any version that I've seen. Let me dash to the bathroom real quick.
Okay, as Lance steps away, I was just typing this comment in the chat, but RRTNZ points out that the being invested is really what it's all about. To which I say, yeah, that's why the lightsaber duel of Kenobi versus Vader in the Death Star in Episode 4, 1977 Star Wars. It's still like, it's not in anybody's top 5 like exciting, but one of the top 3 most dramatic and impactful. And we'd only seen these weapons in a limited way before until he pulls that one out. So it's great. I want to know what's up with this priest. Was he once one of them? How come he knows them? Have they been through this? Have they been freebooting through this area over and over every few years? Like, just coming to him, these guys are locusts. This Anglican priest or whatever he might be, he does not care for the wild geese in the least. It's again, yes. I said earlier, just sorry, welcome back, Lance. Just finished my point. I said earlier, when he confronted by one of his guys' wives, Faulkner was treated as an unclean spirit. And again, here, the priest, he treats him like an unclean spirit, and Faulkner's kind of aware of it. That's one of the things I love about this movie. Perhaps he's all that's bad in the world to some people.
Yeah, this is Frank Finley, who's a very,
great.
very, very underrated actor.
He's powerful here.
Yeah. Now, if you Google it, there's a 2-part made for. It's on YouTube. Certainly was last time I looked. 2-part made for New Zealand television about the Mount Erebus disaster, which is when that tour flight suffered from whiteout, and they flew into the side of the mountain, and basically everybody was killed. And there was a public investigation commission launched, and he plays the judge in charge of that commission, which was sidelined, and they tried to influence it, and people were bribed and all kinds of shit, and they were trying to blame it on the pilots. And it's a really interesting story, worth checking out.
Can I ask you for the and thank you, our FKHD 2005 is right on it. What do you think this priest's outlook on them is? He sees them, he knows these guys by name and face. How much of a problem are they? They've been freebooting for the region every few years like locusts from his point of view.
Like back then, I mean, I could put a very strong argument that priests were the biggest problem in Africa, but let's not go there. He knows
the church hasn't only ever done great things. So yeah, you're right. This guy though, he seems benevolent and dedicated to the village. So in context, when he sees them, not only does he know them, so they get all over the place in Africa, but he's just like, oh, not again. Is his whole outlook?
Yeah, I mean, if they're basically they're there, war's not far behind.
Well, and also he's short-sighted. He's like, you'll bring revolution and starvation. He doesn't say one day people will be freer and happier. He's like, right now, I just want you gone.
The funny thing here is, if they'd all gone with the priest there and then to the plane, they all could have made it and got out.
They're all right. Yeah, there's no movie after this.
Although they would have had some issues because there's 28 of them. So
if you guys could hold on to the wing.
You probably could have got 28 people on a Dakota. It's 24 plus crew of 3, so 27.
The Black Widow movie accidentally proves that you can fly from Ohio to Cuba on the wing of a plane without getting inside by mistake. Oh. We could just allow that logic.
Now, I've always wondered who this guy is that played this little role,
and why they've gotten nicer. They're not killing people anymore.
Who got punched. And
everyone else did far worse.
Yeah, I haven't been able to find out who played that guy.
I guess they feel bad for this guy. They're like, we're taking your livelihood, we won't take your life.
Oh wait, actually, I do know who played that guy. The pilot was played by Bob Simmons. Bob Simmons was the stunt arranger for the film.
Something told me he was connected with production in other ways. Yeah, it was a great little moment.
Yeah. He was the stunt team supervisor for the film. He was also Richard Burton's stunt double. He was the action arranger on The Spy Who Loved Me. He was the action arranger on Moonraker. He was the stunt coordinator on Zulu Dawn. It's right. That shot of that guy's throat getting cut, not in ITV.
So Amazon's doing a pretty good job with their version of this movie, in your opinion.
Oh yeah, all of this. I don't.
You endorse this movie? This cut of this movie on this service?
Because I've got it on both. I'm watching your one, and I've got Amazon in the background muted. I love that little sequence there, Sandy. When there's no one around, you can call me Alan. That's so important as well because it sets up what's coming up,
and that they're very military.
So the other thing I want to talk about in this final battle sequence, which there's 2 things that make this final battle sequence exceptional, and I would say historically one of the best. Well, 3 things actually. So one is the geography of the battle is you can understand it, and you understand where everybody is in relation to each other when they do that crane shot where they pull out. What we realize here is that some of the Simbas have got to the village first. They're now between the main force and the airport. The airport is just beyond the village or the landing strip. And and Burton's got an idea of how to, or Faulkner's got an idea of how to draw them out.
And they've got a great deal of military prowess because now they're outnumbered and they've got enemies on both sides of them. And they're still going to make a real good show of showing people just you should not mess with the wild geese. Like these people are going to wish they let them go.
So then we got our main body of
World War I Lewis gun.
Yeah, Vickers. Well, they were used in these were used in World War II as well.
But shouldn't we have a bucket of water here next to it, right? That's a water
No,
jacket.
the wrap around the main gun tower that actually contains water in it, I think, which cools it down when it's firing.
Right, but isn't it supposed to siphon through it by going into a bucket? There should be a bucket for it to be pulled out of and drained back into.
I don't know. I think the World War II version. I don't think had one of those.
But World War One certainly.
This shot here, that shot, that's the shot that shows you where everybody is in relation to each other. So
something
now we understand
modern filmmakers. We know where everyone is.
Yeah. So now we understand the geography of this battle, and you've got a very similar battle at the end of Tears of the Sun to this, and in the director's cut of Tears of the Sun, it makes a little bit more sense, but it really is done very badly compared to how we understand how these locations fit together. We know where these guys are. We know where the main body of men is, and we know where the guys are that are by the plane. And all of them have got to try and get to the plane. I've done this as a tabletop miniatures game, by the way, with the players.
That sounds like great fun.
Oh yeah, no, it's pretty good. Yeah, so they're trying to get to the plane.
The only real thing you would say in this movie that sticks out is if you're a stickler, inconsistent grenade explosions, but there's different kinds of grenades.
I think grenade explosions in movies generally are kind of they're movie grenades,
Right?
Absolutely. And I'm all right with that.
I am too. It's fun to point it out. Here comes another one. Let's see what it does. Nah.
Yeah.
Whoa! Okay, I don't want to be anywhere near one of those. That's a football stadium worth of people would get hurt.
Also, interesting array of weapons that they've got here, because the RSM's got a Sterling submachine gun. Tosh has got some sort of sniper rifle type variation. One of the other guys has got a GPMG. So you got
four ad hoc. Everyone has a personal weapon, right?
That's right, yeah. But a lot of Uzis, because Uzi sponsored the movie. Now we've got the main body of men who suddenly now come and hit in the side of the people coming to reinforce the village. So I understand where all this is happening, and still people are dying. This is not an Expendables movie. Characters are dying, and it's been set up to me now as the viewer that characters can die at any time. Anyone can go at any time. So now I'm really invested.
Having too many of them die at one time for them to be this many left either.
Yeah. And I've actually gone through this movie and counted, when different members of the mercenaries get shot, like this guy running forward here, boom, there he goes. I think that was
more than 30.
That was Rocky Taylor, I think, that went down on that shot.
Is it consistent to how many guys we have left, which is to say about 30?
28, and now you'd probably be down to
Limbarni.
You're down to about 22 now.
Is Limbarni 29, or are you counting him?
Plus Limbarni, and then Percy Hobart goes down with a headshot. So there's another one down.
Yeah, they're really faithful about that kind of stuff in this movie. The action director is a Chad.
I mean, it's the other thing as well, is like, I like the fact that a lot of them are wounded. They've got bandages and stuff like this. So gradually they're getting whittled down. Right.
It's really hard to take any one of them out of the fight, but yeah, they're getting beat down and worn down little by little.
So now, we know where they are in relation to the plane. We know where the bad guys are. We know that we can see where the village is. So So we know that Sandy's trapped in the village. He's still trying to get through to them, and there's people between the two of them.
I don't know if they're aware of it in this movie, but this is very similar to tragic footage from the end of our Vietnam War, where we saw stuff like this, and some of it got recorded with people trying to pile onto a plane with not enough, and people falling behind and people falling out of the planes.
Well, I mean, God, I'll never forget the footage in Afghanistan with those people
My
all
God,
like, you know,
no.
yeah, trying to hang on to that C-49 or whatever. And,
yeah, one of the saddest things
I mean,
in
that
my
was
life.
just, you know.
Here's a Wild Geese board game, guys. Thanks. You guys are really on it today. Chuck Norris once threw a grenade that killed 20 enemies. Then it exploded.
So, I mean, here, I like this as well. You know, they've got to cross the machine gun. While that happens, some of them get picked off by snipers. There goes another guy.
And they're leaving their buddies behind.
They're always trying to protect Limbarni. Actually, there's a couple of people that get killed because they stopped trying save people. Notice also the other black
mercenary. They're very honorable.
Yeah, there's a couple of examples of that. The other black mercenary, the one who doubles for Kanai and Nashona, he gets shot. There, he goes down there. He just clutches his chest and goes down. So we know he's not going to be on board the plane. Which I think was a good shout, because you only want Jesse and you only want Limbarni on that plane, along with the other white mercenaries, really. Yeah, I don't know what weapon that is that Josh has got, the rifle there. I'm not sure. Somebody in chat will know. Whew. Yeah, this stuff was all great. And then the two guys that are with him. See, one of them is already wounded, but his mate is refusing to leave him.
And he's still a threat while wounded, though. He's got his gun ready to go. He will return fire if he can.
So there was one
ammo he can carry.
There was one thing I only picked up on, probably about. See, they're crawling along there, right? See that? Now, if you watch this shot, see they crawl into the background. See, there they are.
That's really good. What do you call it? Object persistence direction, right? Like, and it shows us where we are. Yeah, it shows us where we are.
When I showed this in the cinema, right, when Sandy got shot, man, like half the cinema screamed out, "No!" And people, you know, because everybody, I think, by this time was expecting him to make it. And of course, as a kid, now I'm like, well, Richard Harris has got to survive. You know, he's got to make it. And yeah, so Tosha's got on. Now the plane's turning to do its final run.
And what a great plane. It's the Millennium Falcon doesn't come close to what a piece of junk this thing is.
You can see that whoever they've borrowed it from, they've painted over the logo with like a kind of a load of like red rusty marks
and they've gone after it with what we Americans call spray paint here and there randomly.
Oh man. So now we're coming up on one of the most just gut-wrenching scenes ever in cinema history.
Says onto something. This is the death of Sergeant Elias is very similar in Platoon.
So one of them goes down. So now we're down to 3, and one of those is Jock, and he gets hit as he's being pulled on. And we have this guy who's kind of, you know, featured extra, probably Richard Harris's PA or something. Yeah, and I just couldn't believe this as a kid. I remember going, "God, Mum, no, you know, no," and you know, then he's limping, and you're thinking, "Shit, you know, what are you going to do?" Oh man, he tells him to kill him because he's got no choice.
This is craziness, yeah, in a movie.
And the whole kind of, you know, stop the plane, and so.
Ooh, that splash of blood right on the lens there.
Yeah.
I think if I had like one more thing to say to him, I'd be like, Emil, get someone other than you who's a human being at heart to raise Emil and shoot me.
I mean, the music here as well is just great. And you got this, kind of drum roll kind of, and then Flynn gets shot in the
A little more
leg, and
jeopardy.
yeah. And even when they get airborne, it's not over. Suddenly then they realize they haven't got much fuel, and where are they going to go? And it says Rhodesia, which of course back then was controlled by the whites. And if you look at the distance from where they would have been to Rhodesia, it's quite far.
Beautiful panorama of how the sky looks.
Yeah, amazing.
After some sketchy stuff earlier with the day for night filming.
Yeah,
just like 70s trick photography by changing how wide the lens is.
I don't mind I don't mind when they shoot day for night like that. It's fine. I mean, it looks okay.
We grew up with it. It's acceptable in that time.
Also, it's, I mean, like early hours of the morning in Africa kind of thing is a very different kind of light to over here. So
that I'd say it added to our like ability to do that great military jump too, although you said that was training.
The other thing that's great about this scene is this is the only time where Faulkner kind of shows weakness. He kind of breaks down to Sean in that cockpit there. So yeah, and then Jesse, there was nothing else to do where Janders was concerned.
Just a badass performance here by Roger Moore as like the incredibly tough Sean.
Roger Moore's pretty good in this, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, he was very hard on himself as an actor. He always basically said he got by his looks, and I think
I've seen interviews with him saying that.
There's a degree of truth in that, but I think if you watch everything that he's done, you look at The Man Who Haunted Himself. You look, because that's his favorite movie. That's his favorite performance.
Mine's Folks. Or whatever, North Sea.
Oh, North Sea Hijack. You see, I love that movie.
I love that movie. He's so eccentric. What a weird character.
I mean, that's another movie where
this man had some range.
Yeah, I could tell you loads about that film. That's another film I know everything about.
Mad Mad Dog Horror would do pretty much this, because this is kind of modeled on how he exits the shell coup.
So yeah, the basis for the book is really based on this kind of this landing of this mysterious aeroplane in Rhodesia with a load of wounded mercenaries on board and an African president that was rumored to be Mose Tshombe from the Congo. And he's in the opening titles for exactly that reason. I mean, if you look at the politics of the Congo at the time, it was a brutal, horrible place, because not only was it being heavily influenced by the West and all of that, but they were also backstabbing each other and murdering each other. No sooner as one person got into power, the other people in that government were doing their own deals, things like that. So it was a very complicated time.
Can I ask you a quick story question, maybe?
Sure.
Based on the inside of this plane, was the fact this many guys bolted for a plane this small showing that there was an awareness that most of them wouldn't make it? They're just like, well, the last 12 of us who get to that point, we'll be okay. But
well, a Dakota is designed to seat 24 people, plus
so they could have gotten in there,
plus 2 crew and a radio man, so 27, including crew members. You could probably push that to 28. So
I agree.
they probably, at a push, they probably could have all got out.
I've seen a Dakota at a couple of air shows, and I've seen the inside of one. It's an incredible thing to do. I've seen static line jump out of one as well. The one thing I keep getting tempted to do, Lance, is paying the grand to sit in the nose gunner seat of the B-27 or B-17, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
it's a lot of cash, but piston driven airplane, nose gunner seat. So yeah, we're in a lot of trouble at this point.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, they jettison everything, including sadly Jock's body.
Well, the flying isn't very important considering the condition of this thing. In the words of Anakin Skywalker.
One of the scenes in my script was when they go to rescue a meal, because there's 11 of them that survive, including Sean Finn's character, and 12 including Faulkner. There was a scene where, okay, well, we'll write to the men who survived, who came with us before, and we'll see how many of them volunteered to go back. And they walk into a room, and they're all there, ready to go, to get basically to rescue Janda's son. And yeah, so that was quite a moving scene in the script that I proposed. I really love this ending, by the way.
Here's the whole movie plot right here. Payback.
Yeah, I mean, the dialogue in this last scene, you can tell, you know, the dialogue in this film is fantastic. You can tell it's Reginald Rose. He's a master with dialogue.
And he notices his chess pieces have been messed with.
And yeah, that's an expensive chess set, by the way. That's like a $500 chess set right there.
This is one of the producers' homes. It's great. It looks like James Bond's office in some movies.
No, I think this is a set. I think this is a set in
looks like a Bond set.
Yeah.
He knows right away he's in trouble.
But I love that line where he goes, "There are at least 6 servants in the house." Oh, I thought at least 10. How on earth do you make do? You know, it's just like so good.
Yeah, he really doesn't like men like Sir Edward Masterson. He tries to be a tough guy here at the end, not backing down.
No, it's just great. This is a great you know, it's a great sort of brinkmanship scene. I think the only thing that ruins it a little bit is the actor. He kind of, his death scene, he should have just gone boom. He should have just gone down, but he does that kind of wait, and that's a bit cheesy, that bit.
Yeah, we don't know what they were asking for from him. Guy's a great actor with a great resume, but certainly he was more of a guy who was a hero than someone who would die in most movies. It's kind of an interesting role for him as our guest. I'm so sorry that you're not feeling well, Lance. It speaks to your passion, and I hope that our audience enjoys this, and I hope everyone coming through later enjoys it. Hit the like and follow, and check out Lance's book.
Yeah, let's have a look what's in your safe. He's got that line as well, isn't he? $1,000 bills. I wonder the US Treasury wonders where all that went, you know.
I'm sure Sir Edward has a few other interesting stuff, things in that it's like the Watergate tape. I'll be taking that as well.
Yeah.
Whoopee cushion and like some cocaine. It's like, yeah, you're a fun all around guy, Sir Edward. I feel bad doing this, but you really fucked my friends over. He has the typical rich guy villain wall safe, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is the $1,000 bill line coming up. I'm gonna have to jet off fairly shortly when we wrap up here. So
Not a problem. Go tell us
just
whatever you want to tell us.
I'll just give my final thoughts, which is, even though there's a couple of bits in the film that haven't aged well, if you take it at its face value, the bottom line is it's a great action adventure story about comradeship, loyalty, and friendship, and
Absolutely.
you know what that means above all else.
Right.
And also, I think anyone who's served in the military, which I haven't, I'll freely admit, but I do understand the bonds because I've been with enough men and spent enough time with people who have. You know, people will get that. I think to just dismiss it as a film that only white male men of a certain age are interested in is really short-sighted, because I've shown this film to every girlfriend I've ever had, and most of my partners have been from different cultures, and a lot of them from Africa, and they've all loved it. And I've actually said to each one of them before they've watched it, I want your honest opinion on this movie. If there's anything in it you find offensive, I want to know. If you think it's racist, I want to know. I really want to, you know, hear your thoughts. And they've always all liked it. So, you know, so I love this.
He's so surprised his pop psychology
No.
failed. That's what I love. If anything, his reaction gives us that. He's like, I'm a great pop psychologist with money. How'd I screw this up?
Man. I like the bit with Roger Moore here at the end. You know, do I have to ask how it went? No, I thought not. And I took that scene for a script I've been writing recently for an actor called Craig Fairbrass, and I copied it almost exactly, but it's in a very different context.
Cool. Yeah, you know, your influences will always show, right?
Yeah.
This is a great movie. It's a homage, in my opinion, right? I mean, come on. And here we are back at Hogwarts for, as we said, the Omen rugby field.
This is Paul Spurrier's best scene, because in this scene he doesn't say anything. You know, it's just, I mean, I do love this ending. You know, he turns and looks at him and he just says, "Let's talk about your father." It's, oh man, how can you not be moved? You know,
it's an action movie that hits different beats.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember when this finished, having watched it for the first time in my parents' ITV. What was it? Did I say 28th of September? It's in the book anyway, 1978. I was emotionally like, whoa, God, you know, I'd not seen a film like it. And my mum was like, right, get to bed. You got to see the film upstairs, get to bed. And of course, as soon as I got up to bed, what I wanted to do was like get all my toy soldiers out and start reenacting the scenes. Before I go, I did dig out, let me jump on camera briefly.
Of course. And thank you, RRTNZ, for a very, very generous $10 New Zealand. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah, I'm dyslexic today. Thank you, Radioactive. Radioactive, thank you for the $10 super chat. Outstanding watch party and review by Lance of the film by Lance. Yes, RTNZ. They did a great job. I'm going to stick around a little while and give some thoughts on the movie. I want to thank our guests. We'll leave the theme song on, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, fun enough. There you go. So this is the vinyl soundtrack of the Wild Geese. Quite appropriate that I'm in a circle, just like at the end of the movie. And it took me forever to get this, you know. I've also got the CD of it as well. I've got the CD. I also actually have the vinyl of Wild Geese 2 as well, the music of which is actually all right, but unfortunately the film is terrible, sadly.
Too bad.
Once again, clearly sponsored by Uzi submachine guns. Thank you very much. But yeah, so
They make a good movie. I don't know how good their weapon is, but they make a fantastic movie. Thank you for showing us that, and thank you, Radioactive, for the $10 super chat. Everyone really enjoyed your insights here, and we had an incredible hang time. Everybody who tuned in stuck around for the whole thing. Thank you for sharing your passion with this great movie with us. Please tell us what you're doing over the course of the week, and I'll pull up the link again for your incredible book, which I'll have a copy of very soon.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm back on tomorrow.
Thank you.
On my own channel at 8. We're doing a retrospective of The Shield, and we're on season 2 now. And we do 2 episodes per show. So it's a proper detailed breakdown because it's my favorite cop show of all time. But
really?
yeah, and then, thank you very much. That's the link for the book. Yeah, and that's there's 101 films in that book, including this one. But like I tell the stories. It's not a making of book. It's these are the stories attached to this film for me. So it's you'll get the story about how I tried to talk my parents into letting me stay up, the whole advertising campaign that we saw on the TV, me then seeing the uncut version of the Wild Geese, me then renting a cinema out so I could see it on the big screen, in my 20s, and so on and so on. So you get all of those kind of stories in the book, and it's very much this kind of journal of my life through the films I've seen. And yeah, there's no one's ever written a book like it, so it's quite unique, and certainly people seem to be responding to it. And I just got my copies of it because I thought finally all the typos were got rid of, and I was just checking it last night and I found another 7, so I'm so annoyed. So it's still
cool.
got
I'll have
some typos in it, but not as many
my
as
version will be worth my version will be worth that much more money with the misprints. Order them now before they fix these. Will there be a book on tape down the road? Have you thought about who might do spoken word if you do the book on tape?
Oh, I'll probably do it myself because it's autobiographical. So I think I'm gonna do it myself, and then there's one bit in it where I read out a letter that somebody wrote to me, and I'll need a woman to do that. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, I better jet off. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, thank you so much. You made Tim's birthday. He wanted to see this movie, and to get your passion, I don't think anyone's ever seen this movie the way we just did. And I take my hat off to you, and I can't thank you enough. If you could make it back on Tuesday, it'd be great to see you again, just to talk pop culture and maybe a little Star Trek with you if you have time. And I really thank you from the bottom of my heart and from the bottom of the hearts of all of the subscribers in this channel who so enjoyed your first appearance here. Thanks a lot, Lance.
All right. Thanks a lot. Take care, and Teag. All the best. Bye.
Outcast Creative's link will be in the description, and you guys will be able to check that out. You should subscribe to it if you haven't already. If anyone could grab the link for Outcast Creative, I recommend it. Let's see how long I've been on here. 223. I think what I have to do is get this one down in about 7 to 15 minutes so that I can prepare for Enterprise tonight, because we have that going on. I hope people will join me, and I would say hello YouTube, hello X. Thank you for joining me for a pretty enjoyable and very impassioned view of what's going on here. And let me read these super chats again that we got. Is that we have Radioactive said for $10, and thank you very much, my friend. If you want to jump in. I'm going to wrap up in under 20 minutes though. But if you want to jump in, and I got to do Star Trek, it's up to you. But maybe we could do a military perspective together and record it, because I think there's a lot to be said militarily about this movie from the point of view of we have a professional who knows something of military matters, and we can get perspectives from them. Well, yeah, there's one reason people are disappointed in modern cinema. In Wild Geese, what we have is some spectacle. We have these flawed, imperfect soldiers of fortune who go on to be less flawed soldiers of somewhat of a righteous cause. It just coincides the fact that they need to survive. We see that they don't fit in anywhere but on the battlefield where no one else fits in, but it's okay for them. It's different for them. It's enjoyable to them. And by the way, look at just by the one of the things I'm really proud of, or at least, well, all right, I am proud of it, but as you can see in Radioactive's chat, we have some of our new channel badging showing up where you can actually see it doesn't come through on StreamYards, but you can see it. Everybody got new channel badges. It's the same logos you used to have. I improved them as much as I could. I got you the very best channel badges I could. If you want to be a member of my channel, that's live. If you want to join my community, but just liking this and the fact that you guys have been hanging out here for so long, it really does help this channel out. Likes, like I said, shares off the browser. We have to wake YouTube up out of its little like torpor here. It's semi-hibernating on me. It's not overly happy to tell people what I'm on, but you know what? Let's check out some more of these chats. And I think, yeah, this is a great statement for the power of the movies that we had in the past. Powerful performances all around. I wonder what the production trajectory of this movie was and how it was able to sort of get from the book that was credited. I believe when I was watching the credits, the guy who wrote the book is co-credited in the teleplay or screenplay. So you got to assume that this is the most faithful screenplay you could have for this book. A Wild Geese 3 would have been great, but I guess you would have had to blow off Wild Geese 2, right? Which was just weird and kind of awful. And I don't remember much of, just like we got an endorsement here from the Wild Geese Authority that it's not the greatest, but I do. Over the course of my life, I've enjoyed watching this movie every couple of years. It's got some fun stuff, some little jibs and jabs that are interesting. We get to see some people who are just very much outside the norm. And I don't know, I feel like there is this subtext here, especially to bring in this priest who knows them. It's not the biggest stretch. It doesn't stretch credulity. It happens really, really adequately. Hey, and we have a special guest in the studio. Let's bring on to the stage Radioactive. What? Thank you very much for the super chat, my friend. It's good to see you and welcome aboard.
Dude, there was no way I was going to add to that conversation at all. Sometimes you just need to know when to shut up and color. And that today was one of those times. So you guys were on a roll. And bring Lance back on. That was awesome.
This was his return engagement. Last time he spoke of movies in a more general way. We got more movies in, but yeah, it's our second time with Lance. He is a great guest. It was incredible to hear his take on the movie. We tell you when we start the movie. We watch the Amazon version of the movie. So I guess just before we get into any technical aspects, what did you think of the movie?
I've got to go back and watch it again because I had not seen that film before. And yeah, I've got to go back and watch it. That's engaging.
I feel like Roger,
you could take Lance's conversation that whole time, and you could put it in as the director's commentary on that film. You know that, right?
I honestly think he knows more than any one given person due to the amount of time he's put in. These people made this movie for 10 weeks, and it was a cycle of making a movie and a promotion of like 2 years, right? Maybe at most. Lance has spent like many years accruing the knowledge of this movie. He's spoken to people at different times about this movie who maybe have not spoken to each other about it. He may be the largest single repository. He may not know. He might be the largest single repository of facts and knowledge about the movie based on the context we have. I look forward to reading it in the book, which is going to be here by sometime tonight. And Gavin, yeah, you're right. What a guy. The book is going to be here sometime this evening. It's too bad it wasn't here a little earlier. I don't know how you sign a book over the internet, but yeah, like that wasn't so much an interview. I just unleashed my expert and like I was just enthralled as all of you. What an enjoyable experience on my channel here. And you know what? This was too big to be a member stream. So why not? I have a funny feeling it was going to retain high rewatchability. So
oh, absolutely, it does. Absolutely. I mean, you could definitely. Well, I don't have Amazon, so I was checking the streaming services to see which one you were using, and unfortunately, it's like on Amazon Prime or whatever. But anyway,
well, we had the
yeah,
Cosby as always, you know. But yes,
yeah, it's definitely worth a rewatch. I have to watch this one again.
it's pretty good. The things that we get called out for would be like the woke mind destruction would tell us that they cyanide down a bunch of the guards who are at this airbase. But like, here's the thing. The excuse for these guys being anything but bad guys would be that they're counter oppressive forces. They were throwing out their colonial oppressors, so like their ends might justify their means. These guys were seen as a brutal regime. They were portrayed as a clearly brutal regime, but like the people who wanted to hire the Wild Geese, their backup plan was to take them out. They didn't tell the Wild Geese that their plan A was to make a deal. We find that out late in the movie in a pretty good, like, you know, reveal that's organic. It didn't feel, there's not a lot of contrivance in this movie, and there's not too much plot convenience. They find a plane, but it's not the greatest plane. You know, they don't get to where they want to go, and they don't really make good their escape. It's just the best bad escape they could get. They'll die. USMC, famous military. Oh, yeah. He gets really great interviews. If you haven't subbed to the Outcasts Creative, you should. The link will be in the description. And I think I put it in, or I think it's in the description already. I might have put it in last night. It's in the community post regarding this. And that community post is available to everyone. It's public. So it's in the community post regarding this channel. Sub to the Outcast Creative. They're at 5,000. And yeah, it's an enjoyable story. It's an amalgam of like true things and sort of, it's a good historical fictional tale where they compressed a lot of things together into one story to keep it really engaging. The movie's not too long. It was just about 2 hours and 10 minutes or something like that. We said 2 hours and 14. You know, Star Trek movies are within a minute or two of that. I don't know. Was it Star Trek?
I'll have to think about that.
They're a little too jaded to be Star Trek. This was like a Star Wars kind of movie. They're like a bunch of like bounty hunters and smugglers who went to do the right thing.
Oh, you mean like the basis set for Rogue One?
They were more like Rogue One guys. Yeah, Rogue One actually in the Wild. Now that you pointed out, Rogue One and the Wild Geese share some common DNA too, including heroic sacrifices of characters like KSO would be maybe witty.
Or the Dirty Dozen. Or the Dirty Dozen.
The Dirty Dozen was
maybe
a movie that I believe.
Actually, I bet you Guns and Navarone might be a better comparison, but that's okay.
Guns and Navarone had the great music. The thing is, Dirty Dozen has the once good, now bad guys who retain a shred of honor and who have a desire to do the right thing. You know, at least by each other and within their narrow codes. It's like Sean is a really bad person, the character, right? Like it's like he uses violence to live a life of relative luxury when he's not working to make those crazy amounts of money that he goes off and does violent things for. We've seen the Richard Harris character. He's really like done some terrible and violent things and he's been able to walk away from it. And, you know, we see Richard Burton use his sense of like patriotism and standing up for the little guy to make him want to be part of the mission, which ultimately comes back to and boomerangs on him. No spoilers on a movie from 1978, guys. You know, the mission doesn't go all that well, but yeah, Rogue One does seem to share some DNA with this.
Well, you know, I don't think we can be surprised by that because you know, when Gareth Edwards made that film, he had to draw from something, and then of course he had to probably had KK just gritting her teeth because it wasn't you know, intersectional enough or something.
For about the first 20 minutes, though, it's like little girl boss when she escapes alone. She finds her way to Saul Guerrero, or whatever the name of the last. Ironically, this movie takes place in Uganda, and our Star Wars analogy takes place in a planet where the last king of Scotland from Uganda, Forrest Whitaker, is hanging out. She finds him. She survives all that stuff, and then we find Andor is just he gets dropped into the movie a little later, and he's just super cool, and he shoots first. Like, I think that's the only thing we know about Andor. He'll always shoot first. Thank you so much, Tim. How do you like this birthday present from the channel? I'm so glad that you were one of the first people to show confidence in me as a YouTuber and one of the first people to back me. So, you know what? You've always been a great pal to the channel, and I was happy to give you this present for your birthday. Happy 43rd. And I hope you got – this was an intense, information-rich broadcast. RTZ had a great idea. Lance was just impassioned. It was great to hear his passion. I need to get him back so we can hear more about the party. You know what I mean? We only talked about the movie. Now we need another broadcast to talk about the party. Tell us about the party at the movie, because he had his 28th birthday party there with all his friends. He went to the theater. He sprang this movie on them, and very few of them had seen it before, and none of them had seen it on a big screen. If I remember, he looked like a lot of them hadn't seen it, and none of them had seen it on the big screen. And I've never seen this on the big screen. My parents were like, "Yeah, you're not going to this movie. You know, you're in grammar school. No way."
You know, it's weird because I've heard of this film before. I mean, just casually, but I'd never seen it before that I can ever recall.
Here's the thing. Right now, in the last 15 years, it's probably canceled because of the fact it's an action movie and male sort of channels only. Like, you have to be a little daring to put this movie on. It's got a little bit of DEI in the fact that one of them is gay and he's also deadly and formidable. But aside from that, the cast of heroes is too male and pale would be something that today's modern writers would be turned off by. We off a lot of people in this movie indiscriminately with guns, which is something that modern writers don't like to do. They don't like to show that guns.
Yeah, they don't want to show the types of phases.
Yeah, and meanwhile, we use a bug sprayer as our most deadly single weapon. Gets more than anybody else. We just go in there and bug spray down all of these these baddies. It's pretty brutal, but it's pretty interesting at the same time. Let's see. It has a bit of a DS9 vibe. A few seasons into the war story, it's morally gray and involves sacrifice, e.g., AR 558. Also, Gareth Edwards, Welsh legend. I wrote down something here, and I don't think I got to ask our guests. Hold on, guys. I know I'm off mic. I just did the worst thing you could do. I turned a pizza sideways by mistake when I dropped the box over. Hopefully the pizza was cold enough to survive. He said it was action, loyalty, and friendship. What do I always say about this Final Frontier is it's friendship, loyalty, and sacrifice. Yeah, and action and adventure are part of the Final Frontier. So I'd say Lance is proving that the core elements of storytelling are universal to people who talk about what they want from a good story and who have the courage to come up and say, this is a good story, this is why, and I'll stand by my take. And it's just great to get his take. As far as this goes, this comports with the history of the Cold War in Africa, especially Central Africa. And this is Central Africa and I guess it's East Africa with Uganda and things like that. Zambala is absolutely Zimbabwe and Uganda sort of rolled up into one. There's a Rhodesia-like country in play. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah, they say a few bad words. I wasn't going to stop my guess though. If we lose the monetization, it's not like I get a you overspoke strike. They'll take that away. And you guys have been deeply generous anyway. The stream has paid for itself, and I'm not going to cut anything out of it. It's a great archive to the movie, and if it goes on demonetized, so what? I mean, it was a great stream to have you guys in on. We had the military advisor aspect. We could actually do 2 more streams about this one. We could do one about Lance's party, and maybe Radioactive knows enough about that too, because he you know what? I'm sure you've done some partying. And then,
me? No, yeah. Never. What?
You never can't consult with us on partying. And so I guess what I want to do is thank everyone who's been here. I'm not ready to quit the air just yet, but we're getting within striking distance of a number. What I really want to do is harvest the and first of all, thank you to everyone who joined for Yellowstone at any time. Right now, we have set up for your enjoyment later tonight an episode of Star Trek Enterprise called Carbon Creek. It's a great episode. I had fun with this one. It doesn't have most of our cast in it. It's a good episode. It might be bad episodic pacing. I have some issues with this story and where it was placed, but not the story. But tonight, if you want to go there now and just click notifications and hit a like so that YouTube opens up on it, you will see I have improved my thumbnail game, and I'm going with trying to show the most important ship from every episode. And then later, if we get an upload for Enterprise Conversations, I go with the most important interaction of the episode. But as you can see, we have a great Carbon Creek thumbnail made by yours truly. And my thumbnail skills are rising, which will help us. But right now, the only thing I can do is ask you guys to give me a little bit of help by liking the watch party and by liking this watch party. And if you can, tweeting out right now off the browser for the Carbon Creek watch party that it's going to be live later. Just tweet it right out so that people know about it. The more people who set the notification, the better. Hopefully they'll tell people. I set this up 2 days ago, so it should. I'm pleased with that. The thing is, the trend keeps going more and more towards X as far as people watching, and we'll crack that mystery down the line. But for now, I'm thankful to everybody who's here to hear our wrap-up analysis. And a 30-minute hang time is something I'm very proud of, and I'm very grateful for all of you. Let's see. It is a double-edged sword, and the Cold War was in play for a lot of it. This is inspired by a guy called Mad Mike Hoare. He was like a British, the only way to call him is British mercenary in Central Africa, like roving across of it, all of it. I think he was mostly, or exclusively anti-communist. I was being a communist was a bit too far. He'll take money to kill people, but he won't be a communist, and he won't support atheists. So that's why we saw things like Russian, East Germans and Cubans as his adversary. But he was kind of this dashing romantic figure who was fighting for imperfect democratic guys. Idi Amin definitely had a few chats with or about Colonel Hoare, who I guess is a World War II brevet colonel. Did you know of this colorful military figure from World War II, Victoria Cross winner, paratrooper?
No, I didn't until you mentioned him last night. I was completely unfamiliar with the real story that was the basis for this film.
There's a few real stories mixed together, and he's just sort of the Colonel Faulkner's the composite version of the colonel that we have in Wild Geese. Is a composite of the different adventures had by Colonel Hoare, and maybe some people like him, but the movie does really just a great job of showing the stakes. And as our guest told us, we saw who was where and how. We saw people being dragged. I called it object persistence. The film term is continuity. Our guest is correct. It's just when we know these guys are moving in a given direction, and then moments later we see their comrades, and it's supposed to be the next instant, and then moments later they come crawling over. Well, we saw about how fast they're going, and we saw about how long it takes them to get into frame. So now we know a lot more about our battlefield. This was a fight that told us stuff. Were you able to watch the final fight?
I did see the final fight. I missed a little bit of the beginning of the film, but where they were in the planning stages, but I saw most of the rest of it.
Yeah, our planning stages, they're Ronins, to borrow a term. These guys are imperfect servants of a fallen master. They used to be with a better samurai than they got now, but they're imperfect servants of a fallen master. They banded together. A couple of them have said stuff along the lines of the movie when he's just like, "Yeah, but for this mission, what makes you want to come along?" It's like, "I don't care, sir. I just love the work." And it's like, whew, this is a really, really, they don't do this for king and country. They do it because it's like, why do you want to be here? It's like, well, sir, I've always loved to fight with weapons or hand to hand. It's like, whew, these are brutal men. And this was, a great movie, but this is a tale of unpleasant things. He was in Soldier of Fortune magazine all the time. Mad Mike Hoare. He powered Sergeant of Soldier of Fortune magazine. It was like, He was Irish, but he was born in India. But yeah, I believe he was Irish. And he cut a dashing figure across like several decades in Africa, like two and a half decades, maybe three. At the end of the day, he was working, they think, for South Africa when there was an attempt to overthrow the nation of Seychelles in a coup that was gone wrong right from the start. It blows up at the airport when they try to enter the country with their weapons secreted in golf bags. They said they were a golf society from England, and they drew these long blank stares from the people there, who finally said, "But there are no golf courses in this country." If only they'd had an internet.
Slight oversight.
If only they'd had an internet, you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, we have traveling golf companions. That's why we have bags full of metal that you shouldn't bother to look into. And think about what a world we lived into where their metal-filled bags were nothing worth looking into. These rough-looking guys with scars who are big and burly, and all of them are dangerous looking. I love that the real-life mercenary did some of the best acting. And some of the best action acting, but that's to be expected, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah.
It does really follow the Seven Samurai tradition and does to that tradition proud. I would tend to agree. I'd love to wish Lance had longer, but the fact that he gave us the whole runtime of the movie and a minute or two more, like, he really was in bad shape. He was coughing and sneezing through the whole thing, and just pure passion for the movie.
As a third-party observer, Teague, I didn't notice it. I thought he did an outstanding job.
He was doing a great job of muting.
He was so on point. Well, he was so on point. I don't know about anyone else in the chat, but I didn't notice it. I was really engaged. I was trying to do things, right? Listen to basically his director's commentary, and then watch the movie, because I hadn't seen it before. So, but that interplay between watching the film and listening to his commentary, I just thought it was outstanding. You did a great job. You did a great job letting him articulate what was going on in the film too. So
there's times when an admiral, it's times when an admiral needs to delegate to the experts. I bring on expert panelists or guests with great passion. This was always going to be, and I said to Lance before he came in there, that I was really glad that he was here, because it's a great stream. We've got Tim, who wanted to see the movie. Then he's been supporting the channel for a long time, and then we've got Lance, who has this great passion for the movie. RRT and Zed puts 2 and 2 together and makes 8. You know what I mean? And we had a 10 as far as a broadcast goes. And I have a funny feeling that as long as we don't go too crazy here and wrap it up in the next 3 or 4 minutes, this will be a very approachable rewatch, and I won't have to do any editing, because he was just very passionate, and it was fantastic to have him here. Teag and Lance need to collaborate regularly. Wow, you have a great dynamic. Teag is a little bit wacky, and Lance is very focused with the dry sense of humor. I hope I didn't offend him with the George Michael joke. I thought that was just in the vein of pop culture. Of all the millions of people in the world, of all the billions of people in the world for him to know, he would have to know George Michael. This just confirms my suspicion that all British people know each other.
Well, it's not that big, so it's not that.
Yeah, from what I understand, it's roughly Rhode Island-sized nation with a population about half the size of Philadelphia. But I really do appreciate everyone being here, and I think really what I'll do is Radioactive. Any thoughts on the interplay? You just were very effusive. So thank you for that, and I thank everyone who was part of the broadcast. We need to close out our poll. Okay, so vote now if you ever hold your peace. 15 votes, pretty darn good. And I see someone just voted now. I love when I watch the poll and it fluctuates while I'm watching it. It makes me feel powerful. It also makes me feel like you guys care and have passion. So thank you for voting. Every vote counts. And by that, I mean every interaction is extremely important, especially when you can regularly count on our red band masters being just kind of unsympathetic. If you're listening and you haven't liked, please help me out with a like. Get me to 20. It would be great. But here we go. What grade would you give the Wild Geese? Obviously, this is a movie, not graded on a curve. It's objective here. A, 62%. B, 25%. That is 92%. No, is it? Or is it 8? Wait. 87%. All right, yeah. And then 6% C, and DF 6%. As you can see, math and seeing numbers in sequence is like the hardest thing for me because I'm dyslexic and dysgraphic, which is why for a minute there yesterday I thought that 1927 was 100 years ago, and I had to quickly fix that on the fly. So yeah, let's just retcon that one. It was 97 years ago that cinematic science fiction started. In 3 or 4 years, when we get hit the anniversary of Metropolis, we should celebrate. But final thoughts, Radioactive, on this one?
On the film?
I'd love to reach you far the stream with Lance. The film.
Well,
or the stream.
Like I said, I've got to see it again. I'm going to have to watch this again now. Yeah, obviously the cast is outstanding. So there's
great performances all around.
There's not much I could add to the conversation on this, to be honest. I would have been a fifth.
Yeah. You know what? The last thing I would throw in here is I thought that Roger Moore's desire here was to be just a slightly darker, more ruthless action hero than Bond is. He was beyond the darkest Bond he played, which to me would be in the one with Christopher Lee, Man with the Golden Gun, where he's just really dark and purposeful and grim. That is a pretty grim.
One of my more favorite Bond films, actually.
I love that movie. I love Scaramunga's little practice. And range.
The funny thing about that film is when you realize that Christopher Lee is starring in a Bond film, and Ian Fleming based the Bond character
in part a little bit
on Christopher Lee's activities during World War II, because Christopher Lee was Ian Fleming's cousin. That, to me, that's just such an interesting.
And he's met Tolkien, and he goes on to play Saruman.
Yeah,
he meets Tolkien and gets to have a couple of conversations with him, and it also improves the rings of the Lord of the Rings with one of the most powerful scenes is when Saruman takes out Brad Dourif's Grima, and he just Grima's taken out by Saruman, and he just gasps instead of screaming. It's sort of a reverse gasp. He opens his mouth and nothing comes out. And Christopher Lee was like, "Oh no, I wouldn't scream. That's not what happens when you stab a man like that." It's like, "How would you know?" Ow.
Well, let me tell you the ways.
Peter Jackson was like, "Oh." So we're at 2 hours and 59. I thank all of you. Do me a favor, if you can. Let me paste the link in here again. This is the, I believe this is my Star Trek watch party. Check that one out. Please hit the notifications. Please hit the likes for it to push it up in the YouTube feed. It needs all the help it could get. This watch party sits there with just one little old like. If you guys could give it a few more so to power it through, get all the people we can there tonight. I am having a problem overcoming the ends of a shadow ban, the ends of a community warning for doing nothing but talking about science fiction. And tonight's stream is 100% non-monetized, as far as it's not, there will be no commercials from me. YouTube might do whatever they want, but there'll be no AdSense from me. I've turned it off. Star Trek Saturday nights, I've taken this as kind of like a sacred trust between all of us that we're going to keep Star Trek on Saturday night. We're going to keep it as pure of an experience as we can. We got a lot of people out there, and you guys are great and loving subscribers and great and loving Star Trek fans. And we got some 1923 coming up, and we got the end of 1883 coming up, and we'll figure that one out right now. RRTNZ, I saw John Rhys Davies at a con in 2012, and he told Christopher Lee stories. Clearly he was in great awe of Lee. Who wouldn't be? Happy birthday. How do you do it? Is the song copyrighted? I don't know if I can sing it. So it's like, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you, Tim. I hope that Doomcock won't be too mad at me, but I did Burton. What did you think?
I thought you did a pretty good job with that.
I wanted
and that last scene, in this film, just to bring something up, the first thing I'm thinking of, he could have played Bond.
Who? Oh yeah.
That whole last scene, that was Bond. Had Bond all over it.
He could have played Bond. He was a little too old, but you know what? At the end, he was like a much more deep and dark and evil Bond, than Bond. But before we get out of here, if you may have noticed this one, guys, Anthony Hopkins is kind of got some training from Richard Burton. And it comes through. It seems everything I've seen has held up this much repeated internet thing that seems to definitely be true. I wish I could have asked our guest about it, but he was impassioned. And you just, when you have something that great, you don't interview that person. You don't interview them. You just try to contain them. What a great and wide-ranging and comprehensive talk that we got here, guys. This could, like, film class teachers, pay attention to this one. You could play this for your students, and they would get a great lesson on how to make a fantastic action movie, and also a lesson in the amount of an impact that a great movie can have on the audience beyond the author's intent, for sure. So with that one, what do you think? Do we go with the military outro, or do we go? I guess, you know what? Let's go with the longest, biggest outro we have. Right? Have I gone on too long, George? Shut up! Jeez, okay, I'm sorry. He wants me to go back to the front, radioactive. Guys, you're the best. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. You know what? Before I leave, let me just make sure I take care of this. I'm trying to remember to do it. Let's close the poll with 16 votes. It's 62%. It stays at 87% out of 16 people think it's an A or a B. 62% A. Overwhelmingly, this movie is an A to most people. I want to say that Teags Saturday Sinema, and if you notice, I have two major shows aside from TS. Teags Intense Talk Show is during the week. We do the same kind of stuff that you could expect from Midnight's Edge and Culture Casino, and we're getting a little more into the social commentary. They punish me a little less for it every time, if you notice. Like, I almost had an audience this time, the beginnings of an audience for this. So the word's getting out. There's going to be continued ongoing changes. We're not going with a scripted show, but we're going with a scripted show. Is the script like we married to it? No, like we might not get through it, but I come here prepared all the time. To come here with no plan is to plan to fail. So I plan to succeed, and I plan to entertain. For those of you coming through later, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and please give this a like and follow. Comment in here and let me know which number comment you are. I heard that from another YouTuber. Was it Lance himself? Was it the Nerdporial life form? I saw my friend Nerdporial last night. I recommend him strongly. His channel is on the recommends of my page. Check him out, and I'll be back. I'll be back in 4 hours at 9:25 p.m. It really starts at 9:30, but 9:25 I start whipping it up. So you get This Week in 2002, which is always interesting for the first few minutes of the show to keep people engaged, and so that I don't have to play like a 7-minute countdown or a 4-minute intro. Go with a shorter one, but we'll see you back in a little while. And you guys, you earned Sydney Sweeney, but here's what we do. We're going to give you the latest, loudest, craziest one we got. Here we go. We'll see. And why am I doing it? Well,
because I can.